They wear black suits, speak in hushed tones, and wield neuralizers that erase inconvenient memories. They are the Men in Black, shadowy figures rumored to silence anyone who stumbles upon the truth about extraterrestrial activity. Tonight, we're diving into the deepest corners of the web, the hushed government files, and eyewitness accounts to expose what the Men in Black don't want you to see. Are they government agents, alien operatives, or something more sinister entirely? Buckle up, truth seekers, because we're about to enter a world where nothing is as it seems.
In our number 10 spot, we have UFO spotting in Washington. Two harbor patrolmen in the Washington state named Harold H. Dahl and Fred L. Chrisman spotted a UFO over the water of Puget Sound, Washington. It was 1947, and after this incident, they were approached by a man dressed in black that forcefully advised them to not discuss the incident further. This was one of the first sightings of the Men in Black. The men were described as being extremely mysterious, never looking the patrolman in the eyes. Ooh, probably to cover up their reptile eyes, am I right? In our number 9 spot, we have the Stargazer. A young man by the name of Harry lived in the country on a farm and was fascinated by the stars. He was given a telescope for Christmas one year, and he would look up at the stars and study them every night. One night, he spotted something in the sky like nothing he had ever seen before. It was a triangle, metal-looking object flying in the sky. He thought that it had to be a UFO. He ran inside to call his friend and tell him about it, and after he got off the telephone, he heard a knock on his door. He opened it to see 3 men dressed in black from head to toe. There was something a bit weird about them though. They all kind of looked alike, and their noses were almost non-existent. Before Harry could speak, they were telling him to forget what he had seen and never speak of it again. They also subtly threatened his family and his future if he spoke about it. Terrified, he vowed not to. He eventually decided to share his story online because technically he wouldn't be speaking about it. Upon years of reflection, Harry believes that he met some kind of alien. In our number 8 spot, we have the President's Men in Black. In 2012, it was discovered that President Obama of the USA had a few men in black working for him that could have very well been from another world. Footage was discovered of his security at the US-Israel Policy Conference, and they were looking rather alien-like. From the front, completely normal. From the back, we see a bald man with no ears and a pointy chin. His nose looks short and rounded, and his eyes appear to be dark and sunken in. Do you think there were possibly alien Men in Black guards guarding the president that day? It's definitely possible. In our number 7 spot, we have the Fire Watch sighting. A man named Gabe was working a shift at a fire watch tower in the woods when he saw a black SUV pull up in the wee hours of the morning. A few minutes later, the sound of a firearm went off. The next thing he knew, there was a knock on his tower and 2 large men in black were waiting behind the door. He opened the door and they immediately questioned him, asking him to reveal what he saw. He said he saw nothing, and after a moment they appeared to believe him. They told him to never speak of this experience to anyone. Looking back, he definitely thinks he met one of the Men in Black. Originally, he chalked these men up to some kind of gang, but now he definitely thinks that those 2 men were the Men in Black. In our number 6 spot, we have the UFO researcher. In 1976, Dr. Herbert Hopkins, who is a UFO researcher, got a call from someone who claimed to be a rep from a New Jersey UFO organization. The man asked if Hopkins was alone and if Hopkins would be willing to share his research. Hopkins said sure and began sharing with him. Once he hung up the phone, a man was at his doorstep. He described the man as being bald, without eyebrows, wearing a neatly tailored black suit. He had red lips and pale white skin. The man took out a coin and told Hopkins to watch it. It started to develop a silver color instead of copper, and then the silver became bluish and the penny was getting quite fuzzy, out of focus, blurred, and then it was simply gone. Apparently after this incident, he was instructed to destroy all of his research. In our number 5 spot, we have the Dan Aykroyd story. This story is wild to me because I have literally had the thought, why doesn't the dad from Crossroads barely work anymore? Did Hollywood cast him out? Like, I've literally just thought about this last week. Well, that honestly might be the case, and I certainly wonder about that after hearing about how he shared this story with people online. So 20 years ago, in 2002, 20 years ago, wow, Dan was creating a series called Out There for the Sci-Fi Channel, and it talked about UFOs, alien abductions, crop circles, and all kinds of extraterrestrial research. One day he was in the middle of doing some interviews when he went outside between 42nd and 8th Street in New York for a break, and he went on a phone call with Britney Spears, funny enough, talking to him about their new movie, when he looked out at the street and saw a long black SUV and two guys in black outside of it. One was very tall and they were just glaring at him. He turned away for a second, and when he looked back, they were gone. He has gone on record to say that he knows what he saw, and there was absolutely no way that they could have turned on that street because he would have seen them. They disappeared as if they had some kind of cloaking device. He found out that his show was canceled later that day. In our number 4 spot, we have the Niagara Hotel. A manager of a hotel in Niagara by the name of Sovar and his security guard reported seeing a triangular UFO outside their building. A group called the Aerial Phenomena Investigations Team reported the incident with the two men's consent. A few weeks later, two tall men in black suits came into the hotel and spoke with Sovar and the security guard. They freaked out the employees allegedly, as they had identical faces, no eyebrows or eyelashes, and were very pale. These two men were caught on surveillance for the hotel, and that footage definitely makes me feel very nervous. A small part of me wants to go to Niagara and ask every hotel about this incident and just, find out which hotel it is. In our number 3 spot, we have the library. Apparently, a professor by the name of Peter Rojewitz claimed that he once was reading a UFO book in the library when all of a sudden a strange pale man wearing all black sat down next to him. The man suddenly began talking to the professor and asked him questions about flying saucers and his opinion on them. Peter said that he wasn't super interested in them. The man became very agitated by this. He eventually left, and the professor felt super uncomfortable. Upon reflection, he is sure that he met a man in black official. In our number 2 spot, we have the disc. A man by the name of Paul Miller experienced something so crazy one day when he was coming home from a hunting trip. He looked up and saw a luminous disc in the sky. The disc landed in a field and two humanoids left the craft. Paul had a weapon on him, and so he fired at the beings as he ran away, and he believes that he managed to hurt one of them. As he was running away from the scene, in a blink of a moment, he realized that he had lost time. It was suddenly 3 hours later than when he first saw the aircraft. He shrugged it off and went back to work as normal the next day. But when he got to work, 3 men in black suits approached him. He was informed that they had his file. He hadn't even told anyone about what he experienced, but these men said they knew all about it. They told him that it was best he forget about what happened. Yikes. In our number 1 spot, we have the photograph. A man by the name of Jim Templeton took a nice photo of his daughter holding some flowers, and when he got it developed, he discovered something else in the photo that was not there when he took it. A sort of white spaceman. How could this be? He took it to Kodak and they authenticated it, and from there, his story went public. Not too long after, he was approached by 2 government agents that called themselves Number 9 and Number 10. They demanded to see the site of where the photo was taken, and when they discovered that Templeton didn't actually see the spaceman in person, that he just showed up in the photograph, they got very angry and walked away. Not long after that, Templeton was contacted by 2 employees at a missile launch pad that was located near the site where the photo was taken, and these men claimed that they had seen 2 figures that resembled the men in the photo. Woo, so weird. Props an alien spaceman. What a wild story.
Starting us off with number 10 is the disappearing coin. Dr. Herbert Hopkins was a consultant on a UFO case in Maine involving a man called Barney Hill who had allegedly been abducted. One night he got a call from an activist in the UFO community asking if they could meet and discuss the case. Hopkins agreed to meet the man, but a few minutes later there was a knock on his door. The man didn't seem like an activist. He was in a black suit and tie, he had no hair, no eyebrows, and was the palest strangest person Hopkins had ever seen. The weirder part was Hopkins never disclosed his address, yet the man just showed up anyway, and when he did, the doctor's dog would not stop barking at him. The man asked him about the case and afterwards told him he had 2 coins in his pocket and told Herbert to take one of them out. He did so, and the agent told him to watch the coin very closely, and he did. It began to take on a silvery appearance and then started going out of focus and fading away till it wasn't there at all. The agent then stared at Hopkins for a while and said the coin would never be seen on Earth again, and then inquired about what all he knew about Barney Hill. Freaked out, Hopkins said he thought Hill might have died before the abduction took place, and the agent told him he was exactly right and that Hill didn't have a heart, much like him not having a coin. I don't really get the link or what he meant by that, but anyway, he then advised Hopkins to destroy all information he had on the case, and Hopkins complied and burnt all of it. Afterwards, he was experiencing a lot of phone troubles, and his company said his line had been tampered with, and he immediately knew they had tapped his line. He never saw the man again. Coming in at number 9 is the Loch Ness Death. Growing up, I think we all thought there was a massive monster or animal of some kind in Loch Ness, like an ancient dinosaur, a mythical creature that was actually real, whatever made our young hearts happy. One man in specific, named Frederick Holliday, was known for his passion for cryptozoology and had dedicated years of his life looking for evidence of a life in Loch Ness. One day while investigating, Holliday looked towards a hill near the lake and saw a man in a black suit. Enter our brooding agent. Holliday didn't think much of it at first, considering it was a very popular tourist spot, but he was freaked out by the fact the man seemed to be staring straight at him. Despite being so far away from him, Holliday felt a malevolence come off him that actually reached him. Before he had a chance to remove himself from the situation, he heard a strange sound and the man just disappeared into thin air. He never saw the man again, but a year later he went back to Loch Ness for more studies and ended up having a heart attack. The weirdest part? He died passing over the exact same spot the agent had been standing in a year prior, and I feel like that was very much not a coincidence at all. At number 8 we have the dizzy spell. Dr. Albert K. Bender was a famous researcher who founded the International Flying Saucer Bureau, and you may have not heard of it because he abruptly shut it down after being visited by the Men in Black. By 1955 he was so close to releasing a paper proving the US government had covered up proof of UFOs. He was about to publish his paper in the Space Review, but alas, that was never gonna fly with the agents, was it? And so they decided to pay him a visit. One night when Bender was in bed, he suddenly felt a nauseating dizzy spell. He started seeing many dark shapes in his room and thought perhaps he was going to pass out or he was just seeing things, but the shapes slowly took form and materialized into men in black suits and hats. He couldn't see their faces, but the only thing he could see were their eyes that were glowing. The men could somehow speak to Bender's mind directly without saying a word. They forced him to destroy his findings and stop his research into the subject. As soon as this encounter took place, Bender was scarred for life. He shut down the bureau, and people claim he was never the same. His other work was almost unreadable after that, and he lived with perpetual anxiety and fear of the men. He'd get continuous phone calls with no one on the other end, and he ended up dying in 2002. See, this is what happens when someone gets too close to the truth. They shut them up and get rid of them. Filling our number 7 slot is the footage, and this was actual camera footage of Men in Black in a Canadian hotel. The 2 men showed up asking questions about one of the employees. The employee claimed they had recently seen a UFO and told all their friends about it, and boom, in the next couple of days, the Men in Black showed up. I mean, efficient, they work fast, I'll give them that. Thankfully, that day the employee in question wasn't at work, so they dodged a bullet. But similar to Dr. Hopkins' case, the staff described the men as having no hair on their head or face, and perhaps disguising it with a wig maybe, and having weirdly hypnotizing eyes. The eyes are quite interesting because in the movie, the agents use memory erasing neuralizers, but maybe in real life they just use their eyes. And honestly, that'd be a lot more convenient than carrying out whatever a neuralizer is, that's for sure. Their outfits were also really questionable. The black suits just fit weirdly. It's like they were trying so hard to be normal and fit in, but something was just wrong. They looked like mafia bosses from a noir movie, honestly. They stuck around asking the employees more questions about theories they might have had, and then they left. It left the staff quite shaken, and I honestly don't blame them. Now at number 6 is wool. This story was from an anonymous man who said he was sightseeing in Washington DC one summer and accidentally wandered into the State Department building. First of all, I don't think anyone can just accidentally go in there. I'm sure there's intense security checks, but anyway, he went through the lobby for a while before security started becoming suspicious of him and ushered him out. But before they did, the elevator opened and 5 men came out, 2 in grey suits who seemed otherwise unremarkable and 3 in black suits wearing black hats that obscured their eyes and faces completely. They were even wearing long black trench coats despite it being the middle of the summer and boiling. As the group was walking by, one of the men in black slipped on the marble floor and fell, dropping his portfolio while he did so. Falling down, that's quite unbecoming of a man in black, but okay. The fall happened quite near to the man who was being ushered out, so he helped him up, and while doing so realized the man's legs seemed critically weak. It felt to him like there was just a lot of wool under the suit, and that's what gave its bulky, cartoonish appearance. The cherry on top was despite falling on quite a hard marble floor, the man's expression never flinched or changed once. No pain, no feeling, nothing. And right next to the portfolio, the man found a coin that had writing on it in a language he couldn't recognize, with a wolfman on one side and 2 moons and some navigational lines on the other. Coming in at number 5 is the stalker. Jack Robinson and his wife Mary were both avid UFO researchers way back when, but the deeper they got, the weirder their life got. They would come home and find their house rummaged through and all their UFO files disturbed and disrupted. Someone kept gaining entry into their house no matter how many times they changed their locks. Mary then started noticing a bizarre tall man in a bulky black suit and hat that would consistently stare at their apartment from the doorway. She was scared that that man was the one breaking into their house, so she mentioned it to her friend Tim. Tim drove them both there and actually took a picture of the man who was believed to be a Men in Black agent. My only thing with this story is if the agents really wanted the couple to stop, why didn't they just steal all their UFO files instead of just rummaging through them? Just cut to the chase. At number 4 are the photos. Some of you may know of Danny Gordon, who used to be a very famous radio personality. Towards the end of the 80s, Danny became obsessed with the Wythe County UFO sightings. Countless people in the county said they had seen bizarre objects in the sky, and he wanted to get photographic proof. There was even one time a full school bus of kids saw UFOs going over a shopping mall as he quickly took the photos. And those photos were at a very close range, and they proved the crafts weren't man-made, they weren't from this earth. But after he had captured the proof, Danny's life started going downhill. He got a call from an anonymous ex-military man who warned him that his photos could cost him everything and to stop research for his family's sake. When in doubt, emotional blackmail is the way to go, apparently. Either way, it didn't end there. A few days later, 2 men in black showed up at his house claiming they were journalists at a magazine and wanted to interview him about the pictures. After the interview was over, the men left and Danny realized his photos were all gone as well. He then called the magazine they said they worked for, and they claimed they'd never heard of Danny, let alone commissioned an article about him. Things got even worse when he suffered a heart attack, and even his doctor advised him to stop the research since it was jeopardizing his health. He gave up in the end and never saw the men again. Filling our number 3 slot is the mailman. A postal worker in Washington DC said he was delivering mail one day and decided to chill for a bit and have an apple. He finished it and saw no trash cans around and decided to just throw it on the ground, and after which a security guard approached him, lecturing him and telling him that the area and building he's in is under constant surveillance all the time and that it's not safe for him to do that. First of all, say no to littering, never litter, ever. He thought about what the security guard said, but not too much, and just went on his way. A few days later, he was on his usual delivery run when he came back to the same building. He saw 3 men going towards the building, except they weren't men at all. They looked like they were waddling, not walking, and they were impossibly thin. And it was their frames that freaked him out more than anything else. He went inside the building regardless, because aliens aside, he still had to do his job. As soon as he stepped foot into the building, a group of men in black surrounded him, asking him what he had just seen. He was about to speak when one of the thin figures he saw earlier came up next to him, and then he really couldn't speak even if he wanted to. He was horrified. The men grilled him for hours and hours and then let him go, and the next day his mail route had anonymously been changed. Now at number 2 is the bullet. Paul Miller worked in the American Air Force, and one day whilst returning home from a hunting trip, he witnessed a gigantic luminous disc in the sky. He followed the path of the disc and saw it land in an empty field, and out of it came two humanoid-looking figures. A trained army man, Miller didn't even hesitate to pull out his gun and shoot one. His aim was almost impeccable, and he was sure he had hit one of them. He quickly ran towards his car, but realized he had suddenly lost time. What should have been 30 seconds getting to his car had been 3 hours. Trying not to overthink it, he went back to work the next day and encountered 3 men in black. They said they had his file and that they knew everything, even though he hadn't told anyone about what happened. They gently threatened him, saying it'd be best if he forgot the whole thing, and Miller was terrified. They knew his address, his name, his parents' address, everything, so not wanting to take any chances, he said nothing. And finally, at number 1 is the base. This was from Redditor Karathis59, who said their older brother was in the army, and one night him, his wife, and some friends went to a hill near their base to look at the moon. Quite a romantic idea, I must say. They probably didn't know what was about to happen to them. But while they were there, they saw a blazing blue orb pulling moves that no human aircraft could do, and that was a fact considering the elder brother was an expert in aircraft extant. The group was sat there in awe just looking at the craft before the lights stopped, and the craft just stayed hovering in the sky, almost like it was watching them watch it. This was happening at about 10 PM now, and all of a sudden the craft lunged towards them, and the next thing you know, they opened their eyes and it was 4 AM and they were hundreds of miles away from the base in the middle of a random wheat field. They got out trying to gauge their tire tracks to see which way they came from, but there were no tracks. The car just got there like it fell out of the sky, which at this point I believe happened. A few days later, Men in Black visited the brother's wife and threatened her to not talk about anything she'd seen. They then showed up at the base for the brother and threatened him as well, which wasn't even possible because the base was in a controlled access intelligence area and randomers can't just walk in. But the strangest part was that no one saw them come and go other than the brother. It's like they were invisible or camouflaged, which I'm sure would be very easy for aliens to accomplish, so that's probably what happened. Either way, the family never saw the Men in Black again, but the wife of the brother still bursts into tears every time they're mentioned. Talk about leaving a lasting impression.
Starting us off this countdown, we have Harold Dahl. This is supposedly the real life story that inspired the movie Men in Black. So on June 27th, 1947, Harold Dahl, his young son, and his dog went out on a conservation mission. While out on the fishing boat, they saw 6 donut-shaped aircrafts hovering in the air above them. The crafts then started dropping weird molten type waste onto the lake. He described it as if it was raining lava or white metal. This ended up hitting his son's arm and the dog. The son was badly injured and sadly the dog didn't survive. When this happened, Harold managed to take a picture of the aircraft. The following morning, he was visited by a man in a black suit at a local diner. The man apparently threatened Harold to delete the photo, and he was told to not talk about the incident. But this story has been retold so many times that the facts are now jumbled. Some say that it was his son that got his arm burnt on the alien lava, but in another story, it was his co-workers, so I don't even know what to think.
Coming at number 9, we have the cornfield. It should be no surprise that we are doing a list about Men in Black, and we got a point about a cornfield. Aliens love cornfields for whatever reason. Maybe they land in a cornfield, they scoop up a bunch of corn, then they make popcorn, and that they can eat while they watch humans freak out because they landed in a cornfield. That seems like the perfect circle of entertainment. But this point was thrown on top of Reddit by Redditor Muffins for Petey. They said that they grew up on a farm, and one night they saw something fly down from the sky and hover right above their farm. It was shaped like a rectangle and looked like it was glowing light, like a massive glowing log in the sky. Well, then this thing just vanished. Almost as fast as it came, it was gone. They must have only needed a little bit of popcorn. The next day there was a knock at the door. It was 2 men in black suits and they had dark glasses on. They said that they needed to inspect the farm because there was a supposed gas leak. It was very strange because mostly everything on the farm was run by solar energy. These 2 men had government identification but gave them very little information as to what they were going to do. They just told them that they needed to stay in their home or they were going to be arrested for endangering people. So they listened, and then these 2 dudes poked around for a little bit and then they were off. They never said if they found anything or fixed a gas leak. The whole thing was just very suspicious. And guys, make sure you hit that like button because it really helps us out.
In our 8th spot, we have Shane Sover. This next encounter happened fairly recently.
So on October 14th, 2008, hotel manager Shane Sover had been informed by a security guard at his hotel that he had seen a UFO from the hotel. 2 weeks later, hotel staff were panicked when two strange men entered the hotel in search of Shane and the security guard. Shane, wanting to see who these men were, checked the security footage. And sure enough, two men in black suits wearing a hat could be seen wandering the hotel. The men didn't have any hair and looked fairly strange. Yeah, I'm thinking they were like aliens disguised as humans.
Coming in number 7, we have the footage. If you ever get some hardcore evidence that aliens are real, you better put that stuff on a hard drive and beeline it to the border, because there is no way that you're going to upload that stuff without having Men in Black come down on you. I grabbed this story off an Alien Encounter subreddit, and the person writing it said they for real saw a UFO fly above them and then zoom off like a laser, and they managed to get it on video. The first thing they went to do was upload it to the internet, but all of the sudden they had no signal. This was in the middle of the night and they were all alone. And then out of nowhere, two Men in Black were standing right behind him. They had their faces covered and guns pointed at him. They demanded the phone, and as soon as he gave it to them, he passed out. He woke up in the drunk tank and was apparently being belligerent, but he hadn't drank anything that night, and his phone was still missing.
And at number 6, we have the spaceman photo. In 1964, Jim Templeton spent the day taking photos of his wife and daughter in a field. But when he got the photos developed, he saw something quite strange in the background of his daughter's photo. It appeared to be a spaceman right by her daughter. The only other people that had been there that day were some older ladies. Of course, people didn't believe the photo to be real, but an analyst at Kodak confirmed that the photo was real and hadn't been tampered with. Even creepier, after Jim's story made big news, he was visited by two government agents, two men in suits that referred to themselves as number 9 and 10. They then demanded to see where the photo was taken, and he was heavily questioned about that day. When Jim told them he never saw the figure in person, the men became angry and drove away. It's pretty sus.
Coming in at number 5, we have Albert K. Bender. It turns out dedicating your life to flying saucers is nothing new. Albert K. Bender was the founder of the International Flying Saucer Bureau. This place was leading the field in investigative work when it came to finding out what the government knew about aliens. In 1955, he wrote a paper that was detailing everything the government was doing with aliens, and it was ready to be published in the Space Review. But that would change when he was visited by some Men in Black. They teleported into his room late one night and had the psychic ability to talk to him through their minds. They manipulated him to destroy his research, and that was that. He would never go on to touch anything to do with aliens after this point.
Moving on to number 4, we have Jack and Mary Robinson. Back in 1968, Jack and his wife Mary were both UFO researchers. Didn't even know that was a job, but where can I apply? But the more they researched into aliens and UFOs, the more weird stuff began to happen. One time they returned home to find that their house had been searched. All their files regarding UFOs and aliens had been tampered with. Then things started to get worse. Mary started noticing a man that would stand outside their apartment and watch them. The man was always wearing a black suit and a hat. In fact, they managed to capture a photo of him. Mary had told her friend what was happening, and the friend drove over and saw the man for herself and took a photo of him. It's so freaky.
Coming in number 3, we have the night visitors. I'm on the fence when it comes to meeting aliens. Like, of course I would want to meet aliens, but it would have to be the right setting. Like in a park or at a party or a big reveal event like they do with the latest iPhone. Steve Cook is like, now I give you the alien. But the way this next story goes wouldn't be my ideal circumstance. Reddit user Chop Stew told a story of an alien encounter that brought a man in black into his life. It all happened super fast. He woke up in the middle of the night and there were 5 tall gray beings standing around his bed. He was in a haze, then he started to panic, but before he could even speak, he was back asleep. He woke up the next morning feeling a little bit rattled. Whatever he saw last night seemed so real, but it couldn't have been. It must have been a strange dream. The next day at work, he was called into HR, but there was a new person working. This lady had just come in for the day from head office. She wanted to just talk about his personal life. They chatted for a bit and then she asked him about his dreams. He could feel the hair on the back of his neck stand up when she posed the question. He didn't give in and kept the alien sighting to himself. The next day, the regular HR person was back and he never found out who this replacement was and why they wanted to speak speak to him and how they knew about what had just happened to him the night before. So this time, it was a lady in black.
In our second spot, we have Dr. Herbert Hopkins. Back in the day, a man named Dr. Hopkins was working as a consultant on a UFO case in Maine. Again, I didn't know that was a job. That was until one day he received a phone call from someone claiming to be part of the UFO community. Again, didn't know that was a thing. He asked if he could visit Dr. Hopkins to discuss the case. Hopkins agreed, and he was greeted by an intimidating man wearing a black suit and black tie. Apparently, this guy was extremely pale with no hair or eyebrows. As soon as the man entered Hopkins' home, his dog went berserk, just started barking at him. The man then basically interrogated Hopkins to see how much he knew. Before leaving though, he told Hopkins that there were 2 coins in his pocket, Hopkins' pocket. He then told him to reach into one of his pockets and retrieve it. He did it, and then he said to hold the coin in his hand and look at it closely. Within a few seconds, the coin started to go in and out of focus before disappearing completely from his hand. He then said that the coin would never be seen on this plane again. It gets weirder. The man then asked him if he was familiar with a man named Barney Hill. Barney Hill was a man that said he was abducted by a UFO. He died from cerebral hemorrhage. When Hopkins said yes, he knew of him, the man said, "Barney didn't have a heart, just like you no longer have a coin." Basically implying that he's got the power to kill him. And honestly, he probably killed Barney. Hopkins was then told to get rid of every file he had on the UFO case. And he did as he was told. He burned every shred of evidence. Watch, now the men in black are gonna come after me and Shay for this video. Just saying.
Again, coming to the number 1 spot, we have a message from the future. Now, who knows if this is true? It's fun to believe stories like the one I'm about to tell you because it makes life a little bit more interesting. But a story I snagged online spoke of someone who started to receive messages on their phone. They were from an unknown number, but they had details about things that seemed to be random. The messages would be like, a man in a plaid shirt will buy a coffee with 2 creams and 2 sugars next to you and forget his wallet. Like, okay, but what does that mean? But then these events started happening. It was like these texts were coming from the future. So he started to respond to them, but the person would never communicate outside of these messages that were hints from the future. But why was this coming to our random writer? Well, we never found out because one day a black van pulled up next to him and 4 men in black suits jumped out and told him that he was under arrest. They put him in the van and then took him to a police station. They searched him, took his phone, he was detained for a few hours and then released and was given everything except for his phone. They said it got lost and they would send it to him when they found it, but he never got his phone back, and from there, the messages just stopped.
Starting us off for number 10 is Dr. Albert K. Bender. Albert was a famous researcher who actually founded the International Flying Saucer Bureau, which I didn't even know was real. You may not have heard of it because he abruptly shut it down after being visited by the Men in Black. By 1955, he was this close to releasing a paper proving the US government had covered up proof of UFOs. He was about to publish his paper in the Space Review, but alas, that was just never gonna happen. One night when Albert was in bed, he suddenly felt a nauseating, dizzy spell. All of a sudden, he started seeing multiple dark shapes appear in his room, and he legit thought it was just because he was about to pass out, but he was wrong. The shapes slowly took form and materialized into men in black suits and hats. He couldn't see their faces, but the only thing he could see were their eyes, and they were glowing. The men could somehow speak to Bender's mind directly without actually saying anything. They forced him to destroy all his findings and stop his research altogether. As soon as this encounter took place, Bender was scarred for life. He shut down the bureau straight away. His other work was almost unreadable, and he lived with perpetual anxiety and fear of the men for the rest of his life. He'd get continuous phone calls with no one on the other end, and he actually just ended up dying in 2002. Coming in at number 9 is Dan Aykroyd. Now, if you're unaware, Dan Aykroyd is a Canadian actor, musician, filmmaker, and much more. He was actually an original member of the Not Ready for Prime Time players on SNL back in the day. And I feel like it's a crime, but I actually have never heard of this man. Sorry. Either way, Dan came forward one day about how he was taping a show about the paranormal and the extraterrestrial. After his announcement, he stepped outside to take a phone call from Britney Spears, who asked him to be on SNL Live with her. While they were talking, Dan noticed a black Ford parked across from him on the street. A tall, pale man in a black suit stepped out of the vehicle and stared him down. It was like, you know, when you're at a club and a guy sees you and he's like looking up and down like he's just just found his prey. That's exactly what it was. Dan was like, what a creep, and turned around for a second, but when he looked back 2 seconds later, the car and man had disappeared. As soon as he walked back into the building, he was told his show was cancelled and to stop filming it there and then. Now he knows exactly what he saw that day, and he's still adamant that the men in black are the reason his show got cancelled. Dude, it's fine. Your show got cancelled, you're still on SNL Live with Britney Spears. I think you made it up. I think you can make do. At number 8 we have the library. Peter Roycevich, a professor of folklore, was sitting in the library reading a book on UFOs recommended by one of his colleagues. Out of the corner of his eye he noticed a shoe and a leg, and then boom, a man in a black suit was just sitting right in front of him. How did he get there? Where did he go? Cotton Eye Joe. He immediately started asking Peter if he was interested in the book or had he even seen a UFO before, and Peter told him he wasn't interested and was just reading it as a recommendation, to which the guy got angry and shouted at him asking how he could not be interested in the most important facts of the century. But that seemed to be a fake cover-up, since he seemed quite content that Peter wasn't interested in the subject, and then he just left. After the encounter, the professor was a bit shook up, so he got up to walk around the library, but strangely enough, no one was there. No students, no guards, not even the librarians. It was deserted. Slightly scared, he went back to his seat and walked around again an hour later to find people back in their places. Imagine just sitting in a library, being a tenured professor, someone comes at you, shouts at you for not liking UFOs, and then leaves. I'd be like, I'm failing you for that. You're not even in my class and I'm failing you. Filling at number 7 slot is the sighting. Paul Miller worked in the American Air Force, and one day while coming home from a hunting trip, he saw what looked like a gigantic luminous disc in the sky. He followed the disc and saw it land in an empty field, and out of it came 2 humanoid looking figures. Army man Miller didn't even hesitate before pulling out his gun and shooting one of the figures, and as you can imagine, his aim was quite impeccable, so he was 100% sure he had hit one. He ran towards his car but realized he had suddenly just lost a lot of time. What should have been a 30-second encounter had been 3 hours long. Trying not to overthink it, he went back to work the next day and encountered 3 men in black. They told him that they had his file and they knew everything that had happened, even though he hadn't told a soul. They gently threatened him, because I didn't even know you could gently threaten someone, saying it'd be best if he forgot the whole thing, and Paul was obviously terrified. They knew his address, his name, his parents' names and addresses, everything. So not wanting to take any chances, he said nothing. He actually sent me this whole story in a DM on Twitter. No, I'm kidding. Now at number 6 are the men in grey. I don't know, maybe they just got tired of all black all the time. I don't know. Sometimes I get tired of wearing black, okay? Let them wear grey. Either way, this story comes from William Shearer, who lived in Essex, England at the time. He said he had once witnessed a UFO in the sky, and a few days later 2 men in grey suits who he'd never met before just randomly showed up at his house. One stayed in the car whilst the other started grilling William about what he had seen. But he didn't seem to care about what he said, he seemed more concerned about gaining permission to enter his house somehow. I actually hate that. You know when you're talking to someone and you know they don't give a shit about what you're saying, and I'm just like, why am I still talking? And then you have to somehow just let the conversation end. Either way, what's weird was his voice was super odd. It was expressionless, flat, and his skin was extremely pale. Obviously, William did not let them into his house, but he would not get off that easy. The men told him they'd be back, and soon after they visited him at work. They told him they just wanted to talk to him about the UFO and asked to come in again, and again William refused, after which they both just disappeared into thin air. He never encountered them again, but he low-key thinks they tapped his phone, and William, they probably did. Coming in at number 5 is Larry. So this one was shared by a man named Larry, and yes, that's actually literally all I know about him, that his name's Larry. Either way, Larry was working the night shift at his job when he started falling asleep. But as soon as he was drifting, he was contacted telepathically by some presence or entity. The entity communicated that it wasn't from Earth, but gave him no other information. Being a skeptic, Larry was like, nah, and asked for some sort of proof of his existence, and the entity agreed that it would show up when Larry was chilling with his best friend. Months went by, but he couldn't stop thinking about the interaction. Eventually, he caught up with his best friend at an Independence Day celebration, and while they were eating, a black van pulled up. You already know shit's going down if a black van pulls up. 2 men in black suits came out, followed by 2 more, but the bizarre thing was that they weren't shaped like humans. They all sat near Larry's table, stared at Larry for a few minutes, and then just got up and left. That was it. The entity was probably like, I told you I was real. I am real. Peace. Deuces. Larry's like, what was that? Months of not being able to sleep for that. Either way, at number 4 is Frederick Holiday. Growing up, I think we all thought there was some sort of massive snake-like monster in Loch Ness, an ancient dinosaur, a mythical creature that was actually real. I don't know, whatever made our young hearts happy. I don't know. Your mom. No, I'm kidding. Frederick Holliday was known for his passion for cryptozoology and dedicated years of his life looking for evidence of life in Loch Ness. One day while investigating, Holliday looked towards a hill by the lake and saw a man in a black suit. Enter our brooding agent. Holliday thought it was just a random person given how much of a popular tourist spot it was, but he was slightly creeped out by the fact this man seemed to be staring straight at him despite being so far away. Frederick felt this malevolence and evil come off him that somehow reached him. Before he had a chance to remove himself from the situation, he heard a bizarre sound and the man just disappeared into thin air. He never saw him again, but a year later he went back to the lake for some more studies and ended up having a heart attack. The weirdest part? He died passing over the exact same spot the agent had been standing a year prior. And I feel like that very much was no coincidence. Filling our number 3 slot are code 9 and 10. During the 60s, photographer Jim Templeton took a picture of his daughter near Burla Marsh. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it is a cute picture of her despite the astronaut looking figure right behind her head, so let's talk about that. The next day, while he was at work, 2 men showed up claiming they worked for the government. They wouldn't tell Jim anything about themselves or what department they worked for, they just told them one was called Code 9 and the other was called Code 10. Alright, I don't know why that just reminded me of Codename Kids Next Door. Either way, their badges didn't even indicate any particular government agency that he had heard of, but he still agreed to get in their car and drive back to the marsh. There, the men asked him how the weather was the day the picture was taken, how the animals were reacting, and he said they were huddled together as if they were scared of something. After saying that, the men became extremely hostile, claiming he was lying. How do you even get home from being in a random marsh? Hitchhike your way home. Now at number 2 is the Maury Island incident. Back in 1947, Harold Dahl and his son were putting logs on their fishing boat when they saw 6 donut-shaped crafts hovering above them. The spacecrafts dropped some kind of molten waste on the lake, which ended up killing Harold's dog and badly injuring his son. Upset by the event, he spoke to his boss and friends about the incident in the upcoming days, and eventually he was visited by a man in all black. The man forced him not to speak about the encounter, and a few days later, multiple Air Force agents visited Harold as well. They came to gather information from him about the incident, and it gained enough attention that the FBI actually wrote a report on the matter. But after meeting the man in black, Harold claimed the whole story was suddenly a lie, but years later confessed that it was actually the truth, but he was forced to say that it wasn't. Let me give you one chance to guess who forced him to say it was a lie. If you didn't guess Men in Black, then you're dumb. And finally, at number 1 is Wool. This was shared by an anonymous man who said he was sightseeing in Washington DC one summer and accidentally wandered into the State Department building. Okay, now first of all, I don't think anyone can just accidentally go in there. I'm sure there's intense security checks, but anyway, I'm not gonna fact check you, anonymous man. He wandered around the lobby before security started becoming suspicious of him and ushered him out of the building. But before they did, the elevator opened and 5 men came out. 1 was in a grey suit and 4 were in black suits wearing black hats that hid their eyes and faces completely. And despite it being summer, they were even wearing long black trench coats. As the group was walking by, one of the men in black slipped on the marble floor and fell and dropped his portfolio. The fall happened quite near to the man who was telling the story, so he helped him up, and while doing so he realized the man's legs seemed critically weak. Like it felt to him like there was just a lot of wool under the suit, and that's what gave it its bulky, cartoonish appearance. The cherry on top of all of that was despite falling on quite a hard marble floor, the man's expression never flinched or changed once. It's like he couldn't feel pain, he couldn't feel anything at all. And right next to the portfolio, the man found a coin that had writing on it in a language he couldn't recognize, with a wolf man on one side and 2 moons and some navigational lines on the other. Starting us off with number 10 is Mothman. Now this creature has been seen around the Point Pleasant area of West Virginia, but I won't go too into depth about it because you guys can watch my West Virginia myths video if you guys want to know more about it. Self-plug, hahaha. No, I'm kidding. Either way, Point Pleasant was known to be frequented by a lot of men in black, asking people around town about the Mothman and to not speak about it. They talked to reporter Mary Hire, who later claimed the men who questioned her did not blink even once. One night in Jan of '67, Mary was working late in her office when a 4'6" tall man walked in wearing a black suit, glasses, and thick shoes that added about 2 inches to his height. He spoke in an incredibly low voice and asked for directions to Welsh, but kept edging closer and closer to her. Again, he never blinked and picked up a ballpoint pen off her desk like he had never seen such a contraption in his life. He then grabbed it, laughed out loud quite hard, and then ran out of the building. No one saw him come in or out except Mary. Coming in at number 9 is the disappearing coin. Dr. Herbert Hopkins was a consultant on a UFO case in Maine involving a man called Barney Hill who had allegedly been abducted. One night he got a call from an activist in the UFO community asking if they could meet and discuss the case. Now Hopkins agreed to meet the man, but not even 2 minutes later there was a knock on his door. The man didn't seem like an activist. He was in a black suit and tie, he had no hair, no eyebrows, and was the palest person Hopkins had ever seen. The scariest bit about it was that Hopkins never mentioned his address, yet the man just showed up anyway, and when he did, the doctor's dog would just not stop barking at him. Guys, dogs sense evil. I also did videos on that. So many self-plugs today. The man asked him about the case and afterwards told him he had 2 coins in his pocket and told Herbert to take one out. He did that and the agent told him to watch the coin. It began to take on a silvery appearance and then started going out of focus and then fading away till it vanished completely. The agent stared at Hopkins for a while and said the coin would never be seen on Earth again, and then inquired what all he knew about Barney Hill. Freaked out, Hopkins said he thought Hill died before the abduction took place, and the agent told him he was right and that Hill didn't have a heart, much like him not having a coin. Whatever the hell that meant. Probably trying to be poetic, but I don't get it. He then advised Hopkins to destroy all information he had on the case, and Hopkins listened and burnt all of it. Afterwards, he was experiencing a lot of phone troubles and his company said his line had been tampered with, and he immediately knew that they had tapped his line. He never saw the man again. At number 8 we have the collision. Back in 1967, Robert Richardson went for a drive during which he claimed he collided with a UFO. On impact, the spacecraft vanished completely, yet Richard managed to find a small lump of metal on the road and take it home. What happened to your car, Richard? How did you even get home? There's just some, loose ends that are just not really making sense, right? Either way, a week later, 2 men in black showed up at his doorstep asking for the piece of metal he had taken from the scene. And he hadn't told anyone about the piece of metal, so how did those random men even know about it, let alone where he lived? He then told them he had already given it to authorities for testing, and they replied saying they were gonna hurt and threaten his wife, saying, if you want your wife to stay as pretty as she is, then you'd better get the metal back. He never saw them again. But also, what the hell happened with the testing? Did they find anything? So many loose ends, Richard. So many loose ends. Filling at number 7 slot is the third party. This one comes from Redditor Chronic Cyclist, who said there was this guy in England that was recruited to work for a special department of the Royal Air Force. They specialized in cleaning up after aliens had visited Earth, and one day on the job the man decided to take some photos, because Pixar didn't happen, right? He ended up getting in touch with a third party person that was into these encounters, but the photos were given to the police, supposedly the men in black, in disguise, and then they were lost. Both men involved ended up getting arrested, and the third party guy had his house suspiciously burnt down. Either way, the guy who took the photos had copies in his storage box and agreed to have them released after he died. I haven't seen these photos, so clearly the man's still alive. I don't know why I sound salty about that. Live your life. I'll wait. I'm patient. Now at number 6 is the camera footage. This was a legit camera footage of men in black in a Canadian hotel. The 2 men showed up asking questions about one of the employees. The employee claimed they had recently seen a UFO and told all their friends about it, and boom, in the next couple of days, the men in black just show up to his workplace. Thankfully, that day the employee in question wasn't at work, so they dodged a major bullet. But similar to Dr. Hopkins' case, the staff described the men as having no hair on their head or face, perhaps disguising it with a wig, and having weirdly hypnotizing eyes. The eyes are interesting because in the movie the agents use memory erasing neuralizers, but maybe in real life they just use their eyes. I don't know, it'd be a lot more convenient than carrying that thing around, that's for damn sure. The outfits were also really questionable. The black suits just fit weirdly, like they were trying so hard to be normal and fit in, but something was just very off. They looked like mafia bosses from a noir movie, if I'm honest. I saw the footage, I did. They stuck around asking the employees some more questions about conspiracies and then left. It left the staff quite shaken, and honestly I don't blame them. Coming in at number 5 is Lev. Now this story was shared by an anonymous woman who said she was sure her dad was best friends with a Men in Black agent growing up. Now as a kid, her dad worked as an engineer and was constantly visited by this guy in a black suit, hat and glasses that went by the name Lev. He was entirely bald, which was quite a weird hair choice for the time, and his skin was suspiciously smooth and hairless. Now someone dropped the T. It wasn't laser hair removal, it wasn't waxing, it wasn't Nair hair removal cream, so I mean drop that hair care routine, sis. We need it. Help a brother out, Lev. Now, either way, Lev would be in the same outfit rain or shine. Even on days it was absolutely boiling out, he would be wearing a suit and coat and no questions asked. He had a reputation of hanging around the engineers in the area and lived in a tiny house near a supermarket. The woman was sure her dad knew Lev was an agent or an alien of some kind, but they had some sort of alliance. At number 4 we have the Stalker. Jack Robinson and his wife Mary were both avid UFO researchers back in the day, but the deeper they got into it, the weirder their life got. They would come home and find their house rummaged through and all their UFO files disturbed and scattered. Someone kept gaining entry into their house no matter how many times they changed their locks. Sounds like you got a problem. Now Mary then started noticing a bizarre tall man in a bulky black suit and hat that would constantly stare at their apartment from the downstairs doorway. She was scared that this was the man who was breaking into their house, and so she mentioned it to her friend Tim. Tim then drove the couple there and actually took a picture of the man who was believed to be a Men in Black agent. Now my thing with this story is, if the agents really wanted the couple to stop, why didn't they just steal all their UFO files instead of just rummaging through them? Just cut to the chase. Or just burn that shit down like you did to that other guy. I'm not advocating arson, I'm just saying there are more efficient ways to get rid of things. Filling our number 3 slot is the base. This one comes from Redditor Corothis59, who said their older brother was in the army, and one night him, his wife, and some friends went to a hill near their base to look at the moon. Romance. Who said it's dead? But while they were there, they saw a blazing blue orb pulling moves that no normal human aircraft could do, and that was a fact considering the elder brother was an expert in aircraft. The group was sat there in awe just looking at the craft before the lights stopped and the craft just stayed hovering in the sky, almost like it was watching them watch it. It was about 10 PM now, and all of a sudden the craft lunges towards them, and next thing you know they open their eyes, it's 4 AM, and they were hundreds of miles away from the base in the middle of a random wheat field. Now they got out of it trying to gauge their tire tracks to see which way they came in, but there were no tire tracks. The car just got there like it fell out of the sky, which at this point I believe happened. Craziest shit happened on this list. A few days later, Men in Black visited the brother's wife and threatened her to not talk about anything she had seen. They then showed up at the brother's base and threatened him as well, which wasn't even possible because the base was such a controlled access intelligence area, randomers can't just walk in. But the strangest part was that no one saw them come or go. It's like they were invisible or camouflage, which I'm sure would be very easy for aliens to accomplish. Either way, the family never saw the Men in Black again, but the wife of the brother still bursts into tears every time they're mentioned. Talk about leaving a lasting impression. Now at number 2 are the photos. Some of you may know Danny Gordon, who used to be a very famous radio personality. At the end of the 80s, Danny became obsessed with the Wythe County UFO sightings. Countless people in the county said they had seen bizarre objects in the air, and he wanted to get photographic proof. There was even one time a full school bus of kids saw UFOs going over a shopping mall as he quickly ran to take photos. And these photos were at very close range, and they proved the crafts weren't man-made and they weren't from this earth. But after he'd captured the proof, Danny's life started going downhill. He got a call from an anonymous ex-military man who warned him that his photos could cost him everything and to stop his research for his family's sake. When in doubt, emotional blackmail, apparently. A few days later, 2 Men in Black showed up at his house claiming they were journalists at a magazine and wanted to interview him. After the interview was over, the men left and Danny realized his photos were all gone as well. He then called the magazine they said they worked for, and they claimed they'd never heard of Danny, let alone commission an article about him. Things got worse when he suffered a heart attack, and even his doctor advised him to stop the research since it was jeopardizing his health. He gave up in the end and never saw the men again. again. And finally, at number 1 is the postman. A postal worker in Washington DC said he was delivering mail one day and decided to just chill and have an apple. He finished it and saw no trash cans around him, so he just threw it on the floor, after which a security guard approached him, lecturing him and telling him that the area and building he was in was under constant surveillance and that it's not safe for him to just throw apples around. He was like, okay boomer, and then just moved on with his life. A few days later, he was on his usual delivery route when he came back to the same building. He saw 3 men going towards the building, except they weren't men at all. They looked like they were waddling, not walking, and they were incredibly thin. If anything, it was their frames that freaked him out more than anything else. He went inside the building regardless, because aliens aside, he still had a job to do. Still gotta get that bread, you get me? Now, as soon as he set foot in the building, a group of men in black surrounded him, asking him what he had just seen. He was about to speak when one of the thin figures he saw earlier came up next to him, and then he just couldn't speak. He had lost the ability. No words were coming out, and he was horrified. The men then grilled him for hours and then let him go. The next day, his mail route had been changed.
We're gonna start off the list with a pretty insane news story that didn't really make the rounds over here, which is surprising because this is absolutely nuts. So last year, residents of a small isolated village in Peru claimed to have been attacked in the night by 7-foot-tall alien beings with glowing yellow eyes. They also had dark hoods and wore armor. They looked a bit like Green Goblin from Spider-Man. At one point, one of the beings even tried to kidnap a young woman of the village. And these attacks happened repeatedly, to the point where many villagers said they were living in fear. A number of residents claimed to have fired at the creatures, but they didn't go down. They could also fly. This was all over South American news. The Peruvian military was even called in to do night patrols. So what the hell was going on here? Well, the media has now come out saying that the attacks weren't aliens, but they were just illegal miners dressed as aliens trying to scare the villagers off. But how does that explain them being seemingly immune to bullets or flying? Carlos Castro Quintanilla, the prosecutor investigating the case, believes that the miners must have been using state-of-the-art technology that allowed them to fly. What does he think these illegal miners, what do they somehow have access to jetpacks? I don't know. I'm not buying that. I'm on the fence about this one. It could be illegal miners. Maybe they had bulletproof vests, but the jetpack thing, I've seen real life jetpacks and they are clunky messes. They're just, first of all, no one has access to those things. And even like flying them around, it's just, it's not a smooth kind of thing. We don't have jetpacks, all right? Plus, I think these villagers are smart enough to know the difference between people in masks and awful jetpacks and alien beings. I don't know. A whole bunch of these villagers all said they saw this, so it's interesting.
Next up, we have the Battle of Los Angeles, or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, which took place on February 23rd of 1942, just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. That night, all of Los Angeles went under blackout as directed by the US military, meaning all lights were off. And while the lights on the ground had been turned off, the sky above was lit up by a myriad of strange, unidentified flying objects. The military opened fire, and onlookers were absolutely stunned as 1,400 rounds of ammunition fired up into the sky appeared to have no effect on the UFO or UFOs. Smoke filled the sky, and when it cleared, not a single craft was to be found, in the sky or on the ground. Shrapnel that appeared to have ricocheted off of the target resulted in the death of 5 civilians. 3 more were killed in car accidents due to the chaos of the event, and 2 more of heart attacks due to the stress of the 2-hour-long attack. To this day, it is unknown what objects filled the sky of Los Angeles that night. The event went down in history as one of the largest UFO sightings to date. We really don't know what happened, but if you have any theories, feel free to let us know in the comments.
Next on the list, we have the Shag Harbor incident. At 11:20 p.m. on October 4th, 1967, multiple witnesses in Nova Scotia watched as a mysterious object crashed into the waters of Shag Harbor. But let's backtrack a little and go over some of the other sightings from that night leading up to this. It all began with Air Canada Flight 305, where First Officer Robert Ralph alerted Captain Pierre Charbonneau to a strange object outside the aircraft over Sherbrooke in Saint John, Quebec. It was described as a brightly lit rectangular object with smaller lights trailing it. Meanwhile, Daryl Dory and his family in Mahone Bay saw a large object in the sky. Captain Leo Howard Mercy, a fisherman, witnessed stationary blips on his radar. He, along with his crew, then looked up to see 4 bright objects in a rectangular formation in the sky. News stations were also being flooded with numerous other people reporting glowing objects over Halifax. And then we have the crash. A ton of residents reported hearing a whoosh, followed by a loud bang, and at least 11 people reported seeing a low-flying object crash into the water of Shag Harbor. I'm sure you hear a lot of banging sounds around Shag Harbor. Terrible joke. Witnesses watched as an object with glowing lights floated in the water. It was just kind of like floating there. The RCMP was then called in, who then contacted the Rescue Coordination Center, but before they could arrive, the object started to sink into the water. The Coast Guard was called in, as well as the military. No debris or survivors were found, and according to the Rescue Coordination Center in Halifax, all commercial, private, and military aircraft, they were all accounted for along the eastern seaboard. Whatever this object was, it's never been identified, and it has been officially designated as an unidentified flying object.
Next on our list today, we have the North Yorkshire, England event, which took place in 1952. Reports of a bright silver disc-shaped object the size of a large bus hovering in the sky began spreading across the country. The aircraft was witnessed by people from many different towns, as well as Royal Air Force pilots. In the days that followed, more similar objects were spotted in the skies above the county. People described the aircrafts as being even larger than the one in the first sighting, and described their maneuvers as being impossible for any known aircraft at the time. The events went on for many days and had hundreds of witnesses. Some even used radar technology to track the unknown craft, but no one was able to figure out its origin. Speculation of the UFO being an alien spaceship quickly took off, with others believing that the spherical ships belonged to the government and that they had been deployed into the sky for some kind of super secret military operation. Well, here's the thing. The event took place over 70 years ago, and the government has yet to fess up to the ships being theirs, which at this point you'd think they would have done, right? I mean, to be fair, if they did fess up by now, I probably still wouldn't believe them, but I want to know what you guys think. Alien spacecraft or yet another government cover-up story?
Next up is the Cash Landrum incident. On the evening of December 29th, 1980, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Vicki's grandson Colby Landrum were driving home to Dayton, Texas after dining out when they encountered a mysterious diamond-shaped object emitting flames and intense heat. It was floating above the trees. At first, Landrum, thinking it was a sign of the second coming, told Cash to stop the car. Cash considered turning back, but the road was too narrow. The object was described as intensely bright, with small blue lights descending toward the road, emitting flames periodically. Cash and Landrum had gotten out of the car to look at the object, but got back in when the heat became more and more intense. It got so bad that it burned Cash's hand when she touched the car. Landrum even left a handprint on the dashboard. Then the object started ascending again, and after it was back up in the air, a group of military helicopters surrounded it. So after making it back home that night, the three started feeling off, reporting symptoms like nausea and skin burns after the encounter, with Cash experiencing severe health issues, including large blisters and clumps of her hair falling out. Vicki developed a cataract, and Betty was diagnosed with cancer later on. Symptoms resembling radiation exposure, really looks like. The two went on to seek legal action, suing the US government for $20 million, but the case ended up being dismissed.
Alright, next on our list we have the Gorman incident. In October of 1948, Second Lieutenant George F. Gorman was flying a P-15 Mustang aircraft during a training flight. Everything seemed to be going pretty routine until he noticed a strange object in the sky. At first he assumed it to be some type of weather balloon or other kind of experimental aircraft, but as he flew closer to the object to get a better observation, he realized it was something entirely different. He described it as some kind
kind of pulsating, glowing ball of light. He tried to fly away from it, but to his surprise, the object began to follow him. Gorman tried to outmaneuver the unidentifiable flying object, but he was unsuccessful. He claimed that it appeared as though the UFO could anticipate his moves before they even happened. After a while, Gorman began to get seriously freaked out, and in a final attempt to lose this strange glowing ball, he decided the best plan of action was a nosedive. He dove the plane directly towards the ground, and after a 27-minute chase, he was able to lose the object. He leveled out his plane and lived to tell the tale. But no one, including Gorman, knows exactly what was seen in the sky that day. But what's even crazier is that after the incident, his plane tested positive for radioactivity. No one knows why. That's so wild.
Next on the list is the Alderney UFO sighting. On April 23, 2007, pilot Ray Boyer and his passengers observed a strange light while flying near Alderney. At first he thought it was reflected light, but soon realized that it was an object, estimating its size to be about a mile wide. He described it as bright yellow gold with black bands on the side. He also spotted a second object, similar but further away. Boyer reported the sighting to authorities, labeling it a near miss. Now, despite his report, the British Ministry of Defense didn't carry out an investigation, stating it occurred in French airspace. Witnesses on Boyer's aircraft and another pilot from Blue Islands confirmed seeing similar objects. One described it as sunlight colored and another as an elongated oval.
Next up, we have a UFO sighting at the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. The incident took place at 4:15 p.m. on November 7th of 2006, so it's actually pretty recent. 12 different airport employees reported seeing a large saucer-shaped, unidentified flying object hovering over one of the airport gates, gate C-17 to be exact. And it was actually hovering above another aircraft that had been set to depart O'Hare but was delayed because there was a giant flying saucer hovering above it. Duh. The pilots in the plane, along with mechanics on the ground and airline management, reported to have seen the object. But air traffic controllers, however, did not see it because for some reason the craft above the plane was not picked up on their radars. The UFO was visible for several minutes before it suddenly disappeared. And even though the incident had many credible witnesses and was later investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration, no explanation was ever given regarding the events of the day.
Alright, the Travis Walton case. So this story has it all. A UFO sighting corroborated by multiple witnesses and a supposed encounter with alien beings. So it was November 5th, 1975. Travis Walton and his fellow loggers had finished up their day in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. They loaded onto their truck and began the drive back home. They hadn't gotten far though when they noticed odd lights hovering above some trees. They decided to drive closer to see what was going on, and that's when they saw a massive unidentified object. Travis got out of the truck to see what the thing was, and then was suddenly lifted into the air by a beam of light. The rest of his friends drove out of there in a panic, but knew they couldn't leave him there. By the time they returned to the scene though, Travis was gone, and he would be missing for days. 5 days after disappearing, Travis Walton showed up again though. He placed a call to his sister's place from a phone booth outside of town. He was found disoriented and disturbed and began telling this horrifying story about how he'd woken up in a hospital-like room where two bald, alien-like entities were looking down at him. He tried to fight the creatures off before a human being wearing a helmet led him to another room where 3 other humans put a plastic mask over his face. He then lost consciousness again before waking up by the side of the highway.
And to finish off our list today, we have the possible involvement of a UFO in the disappearance of an F-89C Scorpion jet fighter. The aircraft had been used in a training mission over Lake Superior in Michigan in 1953. It had left from the Kincheol Air Force Base, I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, with 2 incredibly experienced pilots at its controls. As it tends to, everything was going smoothly until it wasn't. All of a sudden, the plane had disappeared from the tracking radars on the ground, and it was replaced by something else. An object that was moving around erratically and rapidly.
Ground operators were unable to identify what it might be, but knew that it couldn't possibly be the missing aircraft due to its movements. Eventually, that object also vanished from the radar. An investigation was conducted on the disappearance of the jet fighter as well as the pilots on board, as well as the origin of the second radar detection. But it should come as a shock to none of you that the investigation revealed absolutely nothing. But officials did say that based on the pilot's level of expertise and the relatively easy nature of the flight, it's highly unlikely that their disappearance was an accident. But what do you guys think?
A new UFO sighting took place tonight. This footage was filmed in the USA. Thermal analysis shows what could be a smaller ship flying around, and a much larger mothership behind it. Save and share this video before it's too late.
Oh my god, that is so scary. Also, why do they have to say save and share this video before it's too late? That just creeps me out. Don't say things like that. Like, that and the music, it just makes me think that it's the end of the world.
That looked like an alien ship, and the whole lightning and spooky atmosphere is not helping. Oh no, the aliens are coming. We gotta prepare. We need a secret underground bunker. Shut up, don't say that, Chris. I know, but don't scare me.
A 30-second video from Jharkhand is going viral all over the internet. In the video, a strange, eerie-looking human figure can be seen strolling down the road. The video was apparently recorded on the Chhadwa Dam Bridge in the Hazaribagh district by some bikers. Seeing that, some are saying that it is an alien and some are claiming it to be a ghost. After the appearance, there has been a war on the social media sites among the people to determine the exact type of supernatural being that the creature is.
Maybe it's a ghost alien. Maybe it's a ghost and an alien, a ghost alien. Why is it so creepy? Like, it's so lanky and weird. But at the same time, I feel like aliens are more stealthy than that, you know? Like, I feel like it wouldn't just be walking like, oh, da, 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 hey yo, what's up, you know? Like, just for everyone to see. They've been stealthy and hiding themselves for years, potentially, on Earth, so why would they just reveal themselves now? Doesn't really make sense. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe he's just not a good alien. Maybe that's what it is. But it's really creepy. Like, legs were so skinny. Like, that did not look like a human. That looked like a creature of some sort. Ugh. Also, alien, if you're watching this video, just kidding, you're beautiful, love you.
I got it. Oh my gosh. Oh.
What the hell? That strange light in the sky is one of 1,100 UFO sightings in Canada last year. According to the annual survey released by Ufology Research of Manitoba, there are at least 3 such sightings in the country every day.
UFO reports are still a thing. People are reporting them in greater and greater numbers every year.
I'm never going to BC. It's beautiful there, and I was like, I want to go this summer. Yeah, 3 sightings of UFOs per day? Yeah, that's where they're hiding. They're hiding in the wilderness there. Them and the Bigfoot, they're just hiding there together. Or maybe that was Bigfoot roaming through the forest shining his flashlight. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it's not even an alien after all. Maybe it's Bigfoot. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. I'm your host, Lindsay Ivan, and today we are looking at the top 10 real alien encounters caught on camera, and it's pretty spooky so far. And if you guys believe in aliens, then make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. Also, comment something down below, because I like to read your comments. With that being said, let's dive on into the video.
Just about 4:45, and take a look at this viral video from La Junta in southeastern Colorado. All right, Vivian Gomez wrote on Facebook that her security camera captured this on Sunday morning. There are people on Facebook who say it looks like Dobby from Harry Potter, or a ghost or an alien, or a kid in flip-flops and underwear.
Maybe that. Maybe it's a kid in flip-flops and underwear, like na 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 na. I can't see an alien doing the chicken dance. It has to be a kid. Come on. But also, it does look like Dobby. It's not Dobby. Dobby. I feel like she said it weird. Anyways, it does look like Dobby from Harry Potter. That is a house elf for sure, okay? He was like, Harry Potter must not come to Hogwarts. Bad Dobby, and then that was him leaving. After the cake got. If you know Harry Potter, then you know. What the hell is that? Ew! Oh, I literally got the shills. I literally got the chills watching that. Like, this alien was trying to be stealthy and hide behind some tombstones, but it wasn't working. Look at its head. That is massive. That's a massive alien head. That is terrifying. That's like the creature from Predator. I'm sorry. I don't like that thing at all. That cemetery needs to be burned down. No, just no.
What is that? Why does it look like that? I don't get it. I mean, why does it look like that? I mean, it doesn't look like a plane, it looks like a saucer. I just don't get it. Can someone help me figure this one out? I mean, if you think that looks like a plane, I just don't get it. I'm looking at it carefully, and of course, you know, I'm driving in the middle of traffic. I'm trying to get as close as I can to it, and I just cannot figure out what the hell I'm looking at.
That is for sure UFO. Like, that literally looks like a spacecraft. Either that, or it's Ron and Harry going to Hogwarts in their flying car. That's also what it looks like. Man, we got the freaking house elf, and now we got, like, this is just confirmation that Hogwarts is real. Hogwarts is real, man. Yo, wizard Harry. Yo, wizard Lindsay. Wish I was. Cadabra. Lindsay Porter. Oh my. That is an alien. That's an alien. Either that or someone is really good at special effects and has a really expensive alien costume. Because it doesn't really make sense to me. Wouldn't an alien like be like, oh snap, there's a human, or something, and make them forget? You know, like the Men in Black, how they have the little flashy light. I feel like an alien just like points at you and then you forget that you saw an alien. Wouldn't you think, like, this is just too casual, him just, oh hey, what's up? Yeah, you can videotape me. Make sure you get this angle. Yeah, I'll just do my slow model walk. You know, like, it doesn't make sense to me. Also, this alien looks like the one from Scooby-Doo. It's with the green humanoid head. It's Scooby-Doo. Anyway.
Check out this video from one of our viewers, Mash Hatai. He said he woke up at about 2:30 this morning, get a drink of water, and this is what he saw in the sky. Certainly caught his eye. He took the video from Kaka'ako and thinks the lights were over Central or West Oahu, hard to tell from his vantage point. As you can see, the two bright lights, and then slowly a third light appears. Hatai believes he saw about 8 to 10 of the lights total.
What the hell? Guys, aliens might be real, and it's scary to say that out loud. How else do you explain this? Like, also let me know in the comments below if you've ever had a creepy alien encounter, because now I want to know. Let me know in the comments below.
Something is in the sky. What is that?
This video was taken by Misitina Sape at 8:26 Tuesday night near Haleakala Avenue in Nanakuli. Not long after, a woman named Mariah spotted the same thing passing over Princess Kahanu Estates.
I don't know, I looked up. And then I was like, oh, started calling my husband in because it was all in the garage. I was like, hey, look up there. Let's see what I see. They all said, yeah.
The 38-year-old says she's never really been a believer in UFOs, but the bright blue object had them so intrigued, they jumped in the car and started following it.
I don't know what it was. This one was going so fast.
The journey ended less than 3 miles from where it began, on Farrington Highway in front of the Board of Water Supply building, after the object appeared to drop into the ocean.
Oh my god, do the aliens live in the ocean? Like, was it just returning home? Maybe that's why we haven't found them, because they store their spacecraft underwater in the depths in Mariana's Trench. Love that band. But like, in the depths down there, that's where the aliens are hiding, where we can't go. Wow. Maybe that's where they are. Also, they are brave for following this. They're like, yeah, let's just get in the car and follow this potential UFO that could kill us. Yeah, let's just do it. Typical Tuesday.
Now it is darkened outside. Temperatures are sitting at 61 in Buffalo. We have a northerly wind at 7. Good sleeping weather tonight, folks. What was that? Did anybody see that thing go past? Did we just see a shooting star? Good sleeping weather tonight, folks. What was that? Did anybody see that thing?
Nothing impressive compared to the other ones. That was probably just a shooting star. This guy was just trying to hype it up. He's like, how can I make the news more interesting? Whoa, did everyone see that? No, that wasn't a piece of my dandruff flying by the screen. It was actually UFO. So, I'm famous now. I caught it on camera.
The Pentagon has confirmed a strange and unexpected sight captured by Navy personnel off the coast of California. The video shows flying pyramid-shaped objects hovering above the USS Russell and another warship.
It was leaked by filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. He's also shared 3 images from the USS Omaha showing an unknown spherical craft. The Pentagon has
Why did he say it
confirmed
like
its
that?
unidentified aerial phenomena task force, what a task force that is examining the footage.
That guy got really into the story. I think he believes in aliens. He's like, spherical crafts, yeah, aliens. That's literally what he sounded like. The Pentagon revealed that like it was a UFO. But UFO is technically unidentified flying object, so it doesn't mean that it's an ET, it just means that they don't know what the hell it was, which makes me feel better. So maybe it's not aliens, maybe it's just like a drone, I don't know. I'm scared.
Navy pilots say they saw something that defies the limits of known aviation technology. They've been popping up around our national security facilities and baffling veteran military personnel.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
And civilians, including commercial airline pilots, are also seeing it.
We just had something go right over the top of us.
Here's a rendering of what an American Airlines pilot reported.
I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object. It almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top.
Okay, that scares me for a number of reasons. Number one, they said that there was a whole bunch of them flying in the sky. Hello? Are aliens trying to invade Earth now? Like, why can't we just live side by side in peace? Like, what happened to we come in peace? Like, come on, be a good alien. Number two, what if it's like another country spy? Like, I read about this. It could be another country spying on us through these craft type things. I don't know, either way, it's spooky and I'm scared.
An unidentified aerial phenomena dropped down on the Florida coast. First thing in the morning we drove to the beach to find it. This is what we saw when we got there. We tried to get closer but the officers on the beach saw us. When we got home this man was at our house. For days we have seen suspicious vehicles in front of our place. If anyone knows what we should do, please let us know.
You need to move, that's what you should do. A UFO literally crashed down on the beach by your house. That's time to pack up and leave, okay? And literally they're describing like the men in black coming there and like, oh, so you see anything suspicious lately? Any ETs, UFOs? Let me know. That is scary, seriously. Pack up and get the heck out of there. Again, wait, hold up. I think I just put 2 and 2 together. I think I just solved this whole alien thing. Again, it crashed down by water. What if this UFO was trying to enter the water? Like I said before, aliens actually live deep down below in the ocean. Again, this kind of proves it. So, just saying. Just saying.
The first image is a screen grab from a video filmed by a US Marine officer on the 20th of April in 2021 on a military base in 29 Palms, California. After the release of the photograph, multiple Marines came forward to confirm the existence of an aircraft, saying that while the photo showcases only the triangle-shaped formation of bright lights, in person the men were able to make out the black body of the aircraft as well. The unidentified flying object is said to have hovered for 10 minutes in the air before it suddenly vanished without any trace. The men were able to rule out flares for being the cause of the mysterious lights, but were never able to figure out exactly what they saw that night. However, it appears the footage has not been taken lightly, as the Pentagon has started an investigation into just what exactly was seen on the night of April 20th of 2021 in the skies above the 29 Palms military base. Next up, we have a series of photographs taken by cosmonaut Ivan Vanger in August of 2020 whilst aboard the International Space Station that appears to depict 5 unidentified flying objects flying at the same speed while maintaining the same distance between each other as well as their surroundings, moving in a straight line just above the Earth's curved horizon visible in the night sky. Vanguard, both surprised and curious, took to Twitter, now named X, to share the footage in hopes of getting some clarity as to exactly what he was looking at. In an exciting unfolding of events, his tweet was picked up by the Russian space agency Roscosmos cosmos, and a spokesperson revealed that experts were in fact studying the video in an attempt to determine what exactly Vanguard had managed to capture. Did you guys know that Japan was a major hotbed for UFO activity? Because I didn't. But apparently the Pentagon does? In fact, UFO sightings are so common in Japan that its military has reportedly ordered all pilots to disclose any and all identified flying objects directly to the Japanese government. Not only that, but Japanese self-defense forces have also undergone extensive training in relation to UFO sighting protocol. To date, 6 alleged encounters between pilots and UFOs have been reported to the Japanese government, one of which was recorded, and depicts 10 white circular balls flying through the skies of Osaka in Japan. While the government has yet to publicly comment on any of the incidents, the update of self-defense protocol alone is pretty telling. The next image was shared by a pretty reputable source, National Geographic. The image was captured by Sergio Loaiza on September 4th of 1971 during an aerial survey of Lake Kote. Everything seemed pretty normal until the photos were taken back to Loaiza's development lab, where he noticed something very strange. A metallic flying aircraft, estimated to have a diameter of 160 feet, was located in the corner of one of the photographs. When he presented the photos to his superiors at the National Geographic Institute, they shut him down quick, forbidding Sergio as well as his colleagues from sharing any information of what they had seen that day. In 1979, however, the photograph was leaked, and the object that appeared in the image was officially classified as an unidentified flying object. In 2021, the existence of the object was again confirmed after the original copy of the photograph was scanned, and it was revealed that the UFO's presence was more than just a scratch on the lens or a piece of dust in the wind. So what do you think it was? Let us know in the comments. Next up, we have footage that comes to us straight from the declassifieds. Remember how I told you at the beginning of the video that the government quite literally copped to the fact that they have been hiding the existence of UFOs for years? Well, they did, and they came with receipts. On the 15th of January in 2023, while surveilling an MQ-9 Reaper aircraft, an unidentified aerial presence was captured moving at speeds unreachable by any of Earth's modern-day technological advances. Not only this, but as the object whizzed through the field of view of the camera lens, it appeared to leave behind an atmospheric wake before disappearing completely into the sky. Guys, if you have any, please leave your UFO and alien stories in the comments. I would love to hear about your experiences with any of these kind of things. Next up, we have arguably the most beautiful alien assuming photograph I have ever seen. The photo was taken in 2004 by a retired Royal Air Force officer while on vacation in Sri Lanka. The site was described as some kind of colorful giant donut in the sky with hues of oranges, pinks, purples, and whites. After its capture, the photograph was turned into the Royal Air Force Flying Dales base in North Yorkshire in England, where it became a classified document held by the Ministry of Defense. The image has since been declassified, of course, and is now available for public viewing, but there is still a lot of mystery surrounding the photo as well as the photographer, as his identity, along with any other information regarding the incident, is pretty much non-existent. I mean, come on, it's a giant glowing light in the sky. You're really telling me no one else saw this and that there's no other information out there other than the fact that the photo exists? Oh yeah, and not only that, but it was deemed classified by the British Ministry of Defense, so I'm thinking there's something else going on here. Okay, I bet you didn't know that another major hotbed for extraterrestrial, UFO, and unidentified aerial phenomenon activity was Brazil. I mean, I did, but maybe you didn't. In fact, this kind of thing is so popular in Brazil that they have an annual day of recognition for these sightings known as the Night of the UFO, which came to be after a major event took place in 1986. On the night of May 19th, a series of unidentified flying objects were seen in the skies of Brazil, and even more non-visual objects were detected via radar across the skies of 4 Brazilian states. Of course, at this time, any and all knowledge the government had on the event was extremely classified. In May of 2012, however, Brazil's Freedom of Information Act went into place, after which the public demanded the release of all the documents relating to the incident. The government complied, and not only released written documents of the events, but also a series of photographs depicting
depicting strange activity within the skies above Brazil. Although the images of what appeared to be nothing more than squiggles and clouds of smoke didn't provide much clarity, a statement made by the Minister of Aeronautics did. He said, "This command is of the opinion that the phenomena are solid and reflect, in a certain way, intelligence, due to the ability to follow and maintain a distance from observers, as well as to fly information." After this statement was made, the Brazilian government has still not been able to confirm exactly what took place the day the night of the UFOs was born. Next, we have a photo taken in 1990 by two Scottish chefs who were working in a hotel near the area in which the photograph was taken. After a long day of work, it appears the two men had decided to take a hike in an attempt to blow off some steam. While this walk wouldn't end up being incredibly relaxing, it would be wildly exciting, as not long after the two men had set off on their journey along the Calvine Scottish countryside, they noticed something hovering above them in the sky. The object was not one that either of the men could identify, and so they pulled out their cameras in an attempt to document the 100-foot flying aircraft instead. The photos, which have been analyzed and show no signs of manipulation, captured the object being circled by a jet plane. They thought the incident was incredibly strange and even newsworthy, so the two turned the footage over to the local newspaper for publication. But the images were seized by the British Ministry of Defence and were never released. Until 32 years later, that is, by David Clark, who, unbeknownst to the ministry, had kept a photocopy of one of the original images. The identity of the two men was never revealed, nor did they ever come forward to share their story after the images had been seized by the ministry, begging the question of what exactly they saw and what exactly the government was trying to cover up. A photograph taken of an unidentified aircraft lit up by military spotlights in Los Angeles, California, is next on the list. The photograph, which documents an event so big it later became referred to as the Battle of Los Angeles or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, was taken on February 23rd of 1942, just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. On the night the photo was taken, all of Los Angeles was under blackout, as directed by the US military. While the lights on the ground had been turned off, the sky above had been lit up by a myriad of strange objects. The military opened fire, and onlookers stood absolutely stunned as 1,400 rounds of ammunition appeared to have no effect on the unidentified flying object. Smoke filled the sky, and when it cleared, not a single craft was to be found in the sky or on the ground. Shrapnel that appeared to have ricocheted off the target resulted in the death of 5 civilians. Furthermore, 3 were killed in car accidents due to the chaos of the event, and 2 more of heart attacks due to the stress of the 2-hour-long attack. And finally, we have a handful of screen grabs from a video taken by Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich whilst flying an 18F Super Hornet fighter jet over the Pacific Ocean near San Diego during a training mission for the United States Navy. The footage, taken in November of 2004, was captured after Dietrich was asked to investigate a suspicious object that had been seen dropping from 80,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean and then vanishing. When Alex and their colleague arrived on the scene, the ocean's surface, where the object had been reported, appeared as though it was boiling. Moments after arriving to investigate, a strange, elongated white object came into view and was captured on video hovering above the water before it disappeared into the sky at an impossible speed, leaving no wake in the oceans below. While the footage has been confirmed to be authentic by the United States Department of Defense, the object itself, along with its origins, remains a mystery.
Coming in at number 10, we have Project Twinkle. A number of green fireballs in the sky over United States military bases promoted Project Twinkle in 1949. On the evening of December the 5th, 1948, 2 plane crashes, one military in Albuquerque and one civilian in Las Vegas, reported that they had seen green balls of fire. The military crew reported that the light was huge, like a green meteor that strangely curved upwards rather than hurtling to Earth. On top of that, just 3 days later, 2 United States Air Force of Special Investigations workers witnessed a green fireball when they were flying an aircraft. Throughout December of that year, more Air Force workers saw the phenomenon. Then, on January the 30th, 1949, the biggest and most widely seen green fireball was sighted near Roswell. Hello. This led to the Air Force classifying the instance as top secret. Now, a year after the first fireball was spotted, Project Twinkle began. Twinkle was able to record a few events, but the data was inconclusive. if. Goodness gracious, green balls of fire, right? Coming in at number 9, we have the Pori Finnish Air Force sighting. The Finnish Air Force have only ever officially acknowledged one UFO sighting, and that was in April 1969 in Pori. 7 yellow disc-shaped objects were seen hovering in a formation above Pori Airport. When a fighter pilot was scrambled to intercept the UFOs, they accelerated away at an incredible speed. In the same minute, they were spotted on radar 200 kilometers away, which is nigh on impossible. A plane chased after them at 700 kilometers an hour, but they were not able to catch up. There was actually an Oscar award-winning documentary about the case called Visitors from Space, which you should check out. Links again in the description. Ooh, this is a good one. Coming into number 8, we have Foo Fighters. And no, I don't mean the awesome band fronted by Dave Grohl. Also good though. I mean the UFO sightings by Allied pilots in World War II. The 415th Squadron, a United States Air Force unit, were flying over the Rhine in Germany in November 1944 when they saw multicolored lights they described being like Christmas lights, but in the sky. The objects flew alongside their aircraft at 200 miles per hour. They were described as being red, orange, green, and white. They appeared singularly, but sometimes they would appear in formations of 10. It was also said that they could outmaneuver the airplanes they were flying against. The squadron then called it in. Historian Richard Zybart said, "The pilots were very professional. They gave the report, they talked about the lights, but they didn't speculate about them." Foo Fighters were also seen by the 8th Air Force of the United Kingdom over Belgium, and again by the United States Air Forces in the South Pacific by the military in the 1960s. At the time, there were theories that actually they were a secret Nazi weapon, or indeed aliens. To this day, we don't know who or what the Foo Fighters were. All my life I've been searching for something. Something never comes, never leads to aliens. I think that's what Dave Grohl was trying to tell us. Coming into number 7, we have ghost rockets. Swedish military defense were on high alert when they spotted rockets in February 1946, some 5 months after the First World War informally ended. About 2,000 sightings were logged between May and December 1946 by military personnel, but just 200 were recorded on radar. The Swedish army released a photograph of one of the rockets, which is still an unsolved mystery to this day. No targets were ever reported to have been struck, but at the time, it was thought that they were long-range test missiles from the Soviets. This was largely rejected though, because fragments were never officially found. Reports were made of objects crashing into lakes. A witness even saw a grey rocket fall into Lake Kolmarv in June of 1946. The Swedish military underwent several dive missions in a number of lakes to try and even look for these ghost missiles, but they found nothing other than, I guess, like craters and slightly disturbed aquatic life. The military opinion from both Sweden and the United States was not officially decided upon, but a declassified document from the time suggests that some were convinced that they were alien flying saucers. By 1947, the ghost rockets had stopped, so what were they? War nerves or aliens? You decide at number 6. We have the infamous Battle of Los Angeles. Between February the 24th and 25th, 1942, just a few months after Pearl Harbor, a large number of flared and bright lights were reported near defense stations in LA. It seems that naval intelligence on the Californian coast warned of a potential attack that evening, and military radar suggested that there was indeed enemy contact. People were freaked out, the city was blackened and air raid sirens sounded. Strange lights were spotted in the sky over Santa Monica, leading to troops firing machine guns into the sky. One coastal artilleryman claimed to have seen 6 planes, but after 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition fired into the sky, nothing was ever shot down. There was no attack. Or was there? Secretary of War Henry Stimson echoed army brass in saying that at least 15 planes had buzzed into the city. Some people concluded that it was psychological warfare on the part of the Japanese. Others straight up believed that it was aliens. Those pesky aliens. We have viral aliens up next at number 5. We have the USS Nimitz incident. Objects were detected in restricted military training airspaces in November 2004, and video was subsequently released of a Navy fighter jet interception of a UFO over the Pacific Ocean. The footage was leaked to the press in 2017 and quickly went viral, but many were quick to claim that it just wasn't authentic. However, just a couple of days ago, as of the scripting of this video in 2019, the United States Navy have actually confirmed that the video is authentic and does include unidentified flying objects. The Navy is trying to update their protocol for pilots reporting UFOs in order to reduce the stigma. We still have absolutely no idea what the UFO was. Coming into number 4, we have 2014 to 2015. Get ready, because this is heavy. An article in Rolling Stone magazine claimed that the United States Navy had reported UFOs on a near daily basis between Virginia and Florida in 2014 and 2015. This also seemed to be confirmed by the New York Times. Now, the sightings began in the summer of 2014 when Navy pilots reported UFOs 30,000 feet into the sky, reaching hypersonic speeds as they were conducting training maneuvers below. According to Lieutenant Danny Acoyne, the objects had no distinct wing, no distinct tail, no distinct exhaust pipe. He continued by saying it seemed as if the objects were aware of their presence because they would actively move around them. Further to that, at the same time, further Navy pilots were reporting an influx of unidentified flying objects off the east coast to the Pentagon. What was going on? Coming into number 3, we have the Kinross incident. In November 1953, a United States Air Force pilot disappeared after investigating a UFO over Lake Superior on the border to Canada. Felix Monclar scrambled an F-89C Scorpion jet from the Kinross Air Force Base with another member of the Air Force, Robert Wilson, acting as a radar operator down below. Ground control claims that the UFO and the plane grew close on the radar screen. They were going towards each other, and then at one point they even seemed to merge. The then unidentified object continued its previous course and the plane disappeared. Searchers were sent out for it. It was never found. A search was indeed conducted, and it seems that parts of the plane may have been uncovered several years later in 1968, but the identity of the parts was never published. Many think it was all a ruse. The body of Monclar was never found, and neither was any trace of the UFO, so we just don't know what happened that night. There have been a number of military whistleblowers over the years. At number 2, I want to talk about Charles Hall and the Tall Whites. Charles Hall used to serve in the United States military as part of the Air Force, stationed in, wait for it, Nevada, aka the home of Area 51. Although it seems that Hall, who worked as a meteorologist, was actually based at the Nellis Air Force Base, which was around an hour away from Area 51, but still. Hall claims that back in the 1960s, the Air Force were actually in cahoots with aliens. He said that the United States military exchanged technology with quote-unquote tall whites, a blonde-haired human-like race of aliens. Hall continued by saying that there was a hangar at the base. Now I quote, "A ship would come into the side of the mountain on the nights of a full moon." I mean, what? Hall also claimed that aliens would travel with CIA agents to Las Vegas casinos for entertainment. Rightio then. That actually does go hand in hand with a lot of other alien conspiracy theories out there though. A lot of people do think that the government have been working with aliens for a long time. I honestly don't know what to say about the Las Vegas bit though. Even crazier at number 1, this comes from Canada's former Defence Minister, Paul Hellyer. So how can we argue? This is crazy, hold on to your hats, because if not, they're getting blown away. Paul Hellyer used to hold one of the top jobs in Canada. He's an engineer with a long career in politics and military logistics. The man claims to have helped found the International UFO Landing Pad in Alberta. In 2005, he claimed to have seen UFO for himself, and in 2014, he confirmed the existence of tall whites. He said that he was aware of at least 4 species of aliens that have been visiting planet Earth for thousands of years. He claimed that 2 of the species are directly working with the United States. He also claimed that the different species are from different places and they should not be considered as one entity because they have different agendas. He says that the aliens that humans have encountered do not think that we're good stewards of our planet, and I'm inclined to agree. Hellyer is still a member of the Privy Council in Canada and is by and large a very credible source.
Number 10. Triangle object. The Defense Department has confirmed that leaked photos and videos of an unidentified aerial phenomenon taken in 2019 are indeed legitimate images of unexplained objects. Photos and videos of triangle-shaped objects blinking and moving through the clouds were taken by Navy personnel, Pentagon spokeswoman Sue Go said in a statement to CNN. She also confirmed that photos of 3 unidentified flying objects, one spear-shaped, another acorn-shaped, and one characterized
disguised as a metallic blimp were also taken by Navy personnel. As we have said before, to maintain operation security and to avoid disclosing information that may be useful to potential adversaries, DoD does not discuss publicly the details of either the observations or the examinations of reported incursions into our training ranges or designated airspace, including those incursions initially designed as UAP, she said. She also said that the Identified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, created to investigate UFO sightings observed by the military, has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. Number 9. Drone footage. On April 19, 2023, the Pentagon released another video featuring MQ-9 drone footage from the Middle East depicting a UAP. In the footage dated July 12, 2022, which the US Defense Department shared online, the US military's MQ-9 Reaper drone somewhere in the Middle East, exactly where wasn't disclosed, can be seen monitoring a strange metallic silver orb-like object flying around below it at some seemingly high speeds while the drone's camera tries to follow it. This footage is significant because while there have been previously declassified US military footage of UFOs, those were all taken by pilots in manned aircrafts. This one, however, was taken by a drone. However, this isn't the only time this particular UFO has been seen. Apparently, there has been many other sightings of a strange metallic orb in the Middle East. Sean M. Kirkpatrick, director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, told a Senate Armed Services subcommittee that it resembled a small metallic orb. He added there isn't an explanation for, but the reason for is due to lack of available data. It is going to be virtually impossible to fully identify that just based on that video, he said, according to ABC News. Number 8. ADAR. The Pentagon's new Office for Investigating Potential UFO Sightings received hundreds of news reports in 2022, and while it can explain more than half of these events, a sizable chunk remains a mystery. Within the new batch of sightings, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office and the Office of Director of National Intelligence say they're focusing on some 171 cases, including some in which objects appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities and require further analysis. Since it was formed last summer, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has received 366 reports of UAP. That total reflects 247 new UAP reports and another 119 that occurred before March 2021 but hadn't been included in the earlier report. The new numbers indicate a steep rise in UAP sightings. Now, the report released in June 2021 lists just 144 reports covering a 17-year period. With the subsequent additions, 510 UAP reports were in their files at the end of August 2022. Officials say they believe the rise in UAP reports is due to the US government's effort to destigmatize the topic of UAP and instead recognize the potential risks the phenomenon poses, both with aviation hazard and potential advisable activity, such as foreign surveillance efforts. Number 7. Dancing lights. On January 29, 2023, Canadian air traffic controllers and pilots couldn't identify two white lights moving in a circular pattern reported over Canada's Northwest Territories. Good evening, just wondering, do you got two planes that are just to the east of your field doing circuits or maneuvers? A crew member aboard a Canadian North flight headed to Yellowknife asked air traffic controllers. Negative, I have no reported traffic in the area. The Yellowknife air traffic controller replied, do you have a visual on something? The crew responded somewhat hesitantly, yeah, we're looking at two lights dancing around here to the east of your field. They're above us about I don't know what. We're not seeing them on the TCAS, Traffic Collision Avoidance System, but we can see lights moving around. Then there's a pause before the crew member on the radio back say, we're not crazy. No, we believe you, the air traffic controller replies, and the sighting remains unexplained. Number 6. Over New Mexico. On February 21, 2021, a pilot flying over New Mexico at the altitude of 37,000 feet reported seeing a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type thing moving really fast over the top of them, according to published audio. American Airlines confirmed that the radio transmission came from flight 2292. The FAA a few days later stated, a pilot reported seeing an object over New Mexico shortly after noon local time on Sunday, February 21, 2021. FAA air traffic controllers did not see any objects in the area of their radar scopes. Seems like air traffic can never see these objects, but the pilots can, and I can't tell if that's better or worse. Number 5. The coin incident. At 7:30 p.m. on October 18, 1973, American Airlines Flight 21 encountered a UFO near Mansfield, Ohio, and reported it. This would be the first of dozens of sightings reported in that area that night. However, the most astonishing one took place 3 hours later and became known as the coin incident. Sometime after 10:30 p.m., an Army Reserve helicopter piloted by Captain Lawrence Lawrence Coyne and a crew of 3 men was flying from Columbus to Cleveland when somewhere around Mansfield they noticed a red light on the horizon. They then realized that the object was heading straight for them at a high rate of speed. Coyne quickly descended to avoid collision, but as the men were preparing for impact, the object came to a halt in front of them and projected a green pyramid-shaped beam over the helicopter. At the same time this was happening, the men reported the helicopter being pulled up towards the UFO. However, it then let go and darted out of sight. The incident lasted 5 minutes. The men described a gray metallic-looking dome-shaped object with a red light on one end and white light on the other. Now, interestingly, after the incident, according to one crew member, the helicopter never worked right again. Now, this whole incident was seen from the ground by a mother and her 2 children who pulled their car over to watch what was going on. They reported seeing the helicopter chasing an object they said looked like a blimp, pear-shaped and as big as a school bus. Number 4. Trumbull County UFO Incident. Featured on the History Channel and numerous UFO documentaries, the Trumbull County UFO incident in northeast Ohio is exceptional because it was witnessed by numerous police officers and a 911 dispatcher, all of whom were being recorded as they spoke back and forth about the strange events unfolding on the evening of December 14th, 1994. It was also seen by many members of the public as well. Now, around midnight, Trumbull County 911 began receiving calls from residents about a strange low-flying light in the sky. The dispatcher sent out Liberty Township police officers to investigate, and one of them was Sergeant Toby Maloro, who saw a light. He got out of his car and looked up to see what he described as a giant circular-shaped object and intensely bright in the center section. It made no sound at all, and the object was there for about 30 seconds before moving away. Shaken, the sergeant decided to chase the object, as did many other police officers in the area. In total, at least 14 law enforcement officers saw the object at night, with all of them discussing it openly on their radios. Number 3. Navy pilots. Recently, 2 former Navy pilots were interviewed by 60 Minutes on CBS News about a UFO sighting over the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Commander Dave Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich spotted the unidentified object during a training exercise but were unable to classify it. Dave described it as a little white tic-tac looking object, adding that it lacked conventional exhaust plumes and had no wings or visible markings. It also moved erratically, the pilot said. In an interview with NBC News, Dave described the 2004 encounter, calling the object the strangest, most obscure thing I've ever seen flying. As soon as we look down, we see the white water, and then we see this white tic-tac. It's pointing north-south, and it's just going forward, back, left, right, he said, adding that it was bouncing around like a ping-pong ball. Dave said he approached the mysterious object to take a closer look, and it began mirroring his movements. Then when the pilot got within half a mile of the UFO, it suddenly vanished. My question is, what was he going to do if he got closer? This whole story is just crazy. Number 2. Multiple objects in the sky. Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who testified that he witnessed UAP with his own eyes, has called on President Joe Biden to investigate the mysterious object spotted in American airspace. Ryan, a former fighter pilot, explained that after 2014, when upgrades were made to our radar system, our squadron made a startling discovery. There were unknown objects in our airspace, and these were not mere balloons like the Chinese spy balloon that dominated the country's attention in February. These are no mere balloons, they could hold their position, appearing motionless, despite Category 4 hurricane force winds of 120 knots. They did not have any visible means of lift or control surfaces, in other words, nothing that resembled normal aircraft with wings, flaps, or engines. These are not isolated incidents, Ryan said. We have a real UFO problem, and it's not balloons. The point is that we don't have a clear understanding of what's above our heads as we thought we did. There are uncertainties up there that we have to deal with. If we don't do it, our adversaries are going to take advantage of that uncertainty, that weakness, to spy on us with various means, as we've seen. It's pretty clear. If there are things over our head and we're not sure what they are, well, we need to figure it out. If they're adversarial, it's a national security issue. We have mechanisms for that. If it's not a national security issue, then it's not an adversarial platform, then it's a matter for scientific inquiry. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this scares me a little bit. And coming in at number 1 is leaked video. A leaked Navy video captured in July 2019 showed a sphere-shaped unidentified object flying over water near San Diego. The footage obtained by a documentary filmmaker and shared with NBC News appeared to show a mysterious object flying for a few minutes before disappearing into the water. The video was captured by a Navy aircraft and recorded in the USS Almsa Combat Information Center, according to the filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. The clip appears to show a spherical object flying above the water for a few minutes near San Diego before it vanishes. It splashed. Military personnel can be heard saying happening in the video. The Defense Department confirmed that the clip was recorded by Navy personnel and said it will be reviewed by the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, a panel established last year to gain insight into the nature and origins of such objects.
In at number 10. This is probably the earliest reported alien encounter that I've come across on the internet. Back in 1896, a man was traveling to Lodi, California by horse and carriage when all of a sudden his horses got startled by something in the distance. The man said that he can see 3 strange beings on the side of the road. These odd looking creatures were very skinny and stood at about 7 feet tall. They were all bald except they had a velvet soft material that covered their entire body. They spoke in a strange language and they were holding a weird mineral that emitted a very bright light. The aliens tried to pick up the man, but he was too heavy for them. Eventually they moved away and they began to float above the ground. The man followed them and then he said that they floated into a huge, like cigar-shaped spaceship into the air and he never saw them again. Sounds to me like this guy is either seriously sleep deprived or he was definitely smoking something. A terrifying alien abduction breaks onto this list at number 9. Amy Rylance probably had the most terrifying moment of her life when she was apparently abducted by an alien back in October 2001. Her friend Petra woke up one night and saw Amy being carried in a sleeping position out through the window on a beam of light to a huge ship. It sounds to me like Petra probably took too many drugs that night, I don't know.
No, I don't drink. I don't take drugs at all. I'm just a normal person.
Well, there goes my theory. Petra ran to wake up Amy's husband, but by the time they made it back downstairs, Amy was gone. The curtain was ripped and the bushes outside of the window were burnt. They called the police, but they obviously didn't take them seriously because their story sounds absolutely insane. But before you write their story off, listen to this. Amy's husband received a call from a woman who lives 8 hours away. She said that she is with Amy at a hospital who is getting treatment for being dazed and dehydrated.
I have other marks from the tests that they did on me.
What sort of tests?
Just getting kind of DNA samples, and they didn't do anything bad to me, so it was wholly a good experience from my point of view.
No one has any logical explanation as to how she traveled such a far distance in such a short time frame. Amy said she remembers laying on a bed with tall figures leaning over her, and then they were taking a bunch of samples. So I don't know what was going on. And now a river abduction comes in at number 8. In 1979, 2 co-workers were fishing off a pier when they heard a strange buzzing sound. When they took a look around, they saw a mysterious flashing blue lights. A UFO started to come down closer to them, and 3 alien-looking creatures dragged them on board of the spacecraft. Inside, the 2 co-workers were heavily examined for about 20 minutes before they were levitated back to the pier. After the incident, they ran to the police station to report what happened to them.
I was hunting a place to run, but it was nowhere to run. There was water in the front, water on the side, but immediately when they got a hold of us, I felt a little sharp something, and they must have gave me a shot to relax me.
Calvin, sorry. We have to stop you for a second because this must have been absolutely terrifying. I mean, you're in a UFO with aliens and what are they doing to you? They're sort of giving you an MRI and examination. That's what you thought was happening.
Of course, no one believed them and they were just seen as 2 crazy people. And now at number 7, whether you call this one lucky or unlucky, we have the Clayton and Donna Lee abduction. A husband and wife from Texas are claiming that they have been abducted by aliens on multiple occasions, not just one time. They struck multiple times. Donna Lee reported that she was taken while she was pregnant and she lost her child due to the alien abduction. Maybe they took it? I don't know. Her husband Clayton said that they have been abducted numerous times throughout his life, and he remembers his first abduction happened when he was a little boy at a park. He remembered floating into the sky and seeing stars and then complete darkness before he passed out. He even has a scar on his side and believes that it was caused by aliens who were attempting to take DNA samples from him.
Did you see the aliens?
Yes.
What did they look like?
What I saw on that particular visit, they were tall, slender, blonde, looked human, but not human, not quite human. They didn't really use their voices to talk. For me, about being abducted is they bring me back. I'm here.
Well, maybe they won't someday, Donna. Maybe they'll take you to wherever they live.
They might not, but so far they have. So you can't live in that kind of fear and still have a life.
When was the last time?
Sounds like she enjoys being abducted. I don't know. A scary alien encounter brings us to number 6. Barney and Betty Hill were driving back to their house after they took a vacation in Niagara Falls. While driving, they saw a light in the sky that looked like it was getting closer to them. Eventually, it appeared as a huge shape hovering over their car. Barney got out and used his binoculars to look up above them. He was able to see 11 humanoid figures in shiny black uniforms and capes, and they were all watching them. If that was me, I'd race into my car and drive faster than Van Diesel and get the hell out of there. That's exactly what they tried to do, but they both said that they experienced a strange buzzing sensation, but they were able to make it back home alive. But they weren't untouched. Their clothes have been torn in strange places, and Betty found a strange pink residue on her dress. She also experienced really intense and vivid dreams about the experience, and she even remembers having skin samples taken from her and injections were put into her belly button. Here is an actual audio clip from a hypnosis session that the couple had after their encounter. Listen to this.
Alright, here, Captain. What is he? You're still asleep, but you can see it all clearly. Looks like a big pancake with windows. Get away from me!
Something very traumatic had happened to them.
The Travis Walton abduction story crashes onto this list at number 5. This story is actually really interesting. Let's travel back to November 1975, where 6 forestry workers in Arizona reported seeing their work colleague Travis Walton blasted through the air in a beam of light that came from a UFO. They called the police and reported him as missing, but during the investigation, the police suspected that the workers actually murdered Travis Walton and that they had disposed of the body. But this is where things get pretty interesting. 5 days later, Travis reappeared and he claimed that he was abducted by aliens. He said that he woke up on a table and he was surrounded by small figures in orange gowns. Maybe he woke up in a prison. I don't know. Maybe there is an answer for that. Well, he said that their skin was very smooth, but it was chalky, and their bald heads were too big for their bodies. He managed to escape from the aliens, but he went into a room that had humans in it, but they were dressed in blue uniforms. This makes it seem like more of a prison. Well, they never spoke to him, but they captured him and put a gas mask on him, and he lost consciousness. But he does remember waking up confused on a strange road in Arizona. A strange alien abduction case is at number 4. Hillary Porter is known as the woman who has been abducted by aliens more times than she can count.
And you believe that you may have something inside your right ear.
Yes,
Can you
definitely.
Just explain.
A little bit like a telescope. It's got 3 sections,
Yes.
very, very minute. Then the rest goes down into my flesh, into the ear.
Okay.
And this thing sometimes comes right out to the very edge. It depends what I'm doing. It seems like it.
You sometimes feel it moving.
Oh, yeah, you got that feel, and it's slightly longer some days and retracts a tiny bit. And then it was like I was just laying down to go to sleep, and like a little voice came from it and said, "Good night."
Okay.
Okay, how creepy would that be? The first encounter that she remembers was when she was like 5 years old and she was playing behind her home. She said that she remembers seeing a reptile-looking alien standing in front of her. It had scaly skin, black holes on the nose, and a little mouth. She said that the creature grabbed her arms and pulled her underneath a disc that was located in the fields. They performed a ton of painful tests on her, and then they let her go hours later. She said that she'd been abducted a bunch of times and she actually suffered from migraines and feels really sick. Sometimes she even wakes up with fresh scars or bruises, or there are bloody marks and stains on her clothes or bed sheets. Okay, a bizarre alien abduction takes us to number 3. Back in October 1957, a man named Antonio Boris claimed that he saw a red star in the sky. The light traveled closer to him until Antonio was able to see that it was a frickin' spaceship. It landed on its 3 legs in the nearby field. Antonio tried to escape on his tractor, and he was grabbed by a strange creature with big blue eyes. He claimed that he was taken aboard of the spaceship, where he was covered by a gel-like substance, and that's so that they can crossbreed. Eventually he was taken off to the ship and he landed on Earth 4 hours later. He was taken to a hospital where they found burns on his body and lesions. He also felt nauseous and had extremely severe headaches. The doctor later diagnosed him as suffering from radiation sickness. We have another disturbing alien encounter, and this brings us to number number 2. Peter Corey remembers one night back in 1988 as the day that he was abducted by aliens. He was laying in his bed when all of a sudden he felt something grab him by his ankle. He instantly felt pins and needles, and then he couldn't feel his body anymore. He was paralyzed. When he woke up, he saw 3 strange looking creatures around his bed just staring at him. They had gold skin with tiny slits for mouths. They had large black eyes, and he said that they can tell that the aliens communicated telepathically. They inserted a needle into his skull, and then he just blacked out. If you thought that was bad, his second alien encounter was even worse. He said that the female aliens with long white hair appeared over his bed and they tried to mate with him. After the encounter, he saw lots of white hairs on his bed, so he had the DNA analyzed and it was confirmed that this hair was biologically different from human hair. I can't even deal with this story, so let's move on. The abduction of Jesse Long tops this list at number 1. This alien encounter is probably the most popular story out there, so some of you guys might have heard of it. Jesse was just 5 years old when he claimed that he was abducted by aliens for the first time. He said that he was exploring the woods with his brother when all of a sudden they found a round structure in a clearing. A tall, mysterious figure approached the boys and paralyzed them. Jesse said that he remembers being taken to a spacecraft and placed onto a cold table where he felt his legs being poked and prodded by the tall figures. Over the years, Jesse said that he has been abducted many times. He said that he was being constantly experimented on, and they even took sperm samples that they used to crossbreed with a female alien. I don't know about you guys, but that is probably the most disturbing story I've ever heard of. I'm actually so terrified. I really hope that aliens don't come find me if they're actually out there somewhere.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have exoplanets. One of the first things spoken about in the 12-minute long anonymous video is that around 25 years ago, we didn't know that planets existed outside of our solar system. While that seems hard to believe, that is actually basically true, keeping in mind that this video was released in 2017. The first exoplanets, which are what planets outside of our solar system are called, were discovered in 1992, which is super recently. The video then goes on to explain that today we have found over 3,400 exoplanets that orbit other suns. This may seem redundant or unimportant, but this is a really important part of our search for alien life. With the vastness of space, there are so many places that need to be searched, so we have to find some place to start, and these planets are the perfect place. It is entirely possible that alien life may thrive off of entirely different things than life as we know it. The things we need to survive might be detrimental to alien life, but how are we supposed to know that when we don't know any aliens? This is why we started our search by looking for places with conditions similar to Earth, which we now call habitable planets. Part of a habitable planet's requirements is that they are orbiting a star, but that they aren't too close or too far from it like we are with the sun. So what the video is trying to get across is that while 25 years ago we didn't know any, we now know of thousands of planets that might be holding some kind of alien life. While we haven't found the proof yet, we at least have a pretty stellar starting point. In our number 9 spot today, we have Dr. Brian O'Leary. One thing Anonymous mentioned in the video was an apparent quote from Dr. Brian O'Leary, who's a former NASA astronaut and Princeton physics professor. The video stated that he said that there is abundant evidence that we are being contacted, that civilizations have been monitoring us for a very long time, and that their appearance is bizarre from any type of traditional materialistic Western point of view, and that these visitors use the technologies of consciousness, they use droids, they use co-rotating magnetic disks for their propulsion systems, which seems to be a common denominator of the UFO phenomenon. I obviously have no idea how I could possibly substantiate these claims, but they certainly are interesting regardless of what you personally believe. This could of course just be nonsense in order to stir up the masses, but it could also be someone who's finally telling us the truth, but we're all just too skeptical at this point to believe it. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of what Dr. O'Leary said. Do you think it's a hunk of baloney, or do you think that he just might be telling the truth? In our number 8 spot today, we have the FBI documents. Around the halfway mark, the person in the anonymous video begins to discuss some sort of FBI documents that are apparently unclassified, just sitting there on the website. The video claims that the documents suggest that we've not only been visited by aliens from space, but also beings from other dimensions. The video does explain that the document didn't originate from within the FBI, but rather from a university department head, but that the FBI treated the document with the utmost importance importance, which is certainly interesting. It's also very important to note, however, that this document was sent in 1947. I'm not sure if that makes the claims more or less likely or credible, but the timing of it definitely seems important, at least to me. While this is one of those things that you have to draw your own conclusions from, in the video it is mentioned that while we are arguing whether or not supposed UFO or alien sightings have really taken place here on Earth or in space, there are real instances of extraterrestrial beings visiting us, but we're just too focused on the debate to open our eyes and see for ourselves. In our number 7 spot today we have esoteric matters. After the discussion of the FBI documents, there is a claim that these beings that have apparently been visiting us are coming not from a planet as we think of it, but rather some sort of etheric planet that interpenetrates with our own, but that we are unable to perceive. Apparently, if you're a student of esoteric matters, these concepts will make a lot more sense to you, or so this anonymous video claims. Apparently, these alien beings are able to make a conscious decision to enter our plane, and in that same respect, they're also to make a decision to disappear from our view. Apparently, they're visiting us as they are thinking about settling here on our plane, and that they are coming here peacefully. During these visits, they are also said to have technology that would destroy any sort of attack made on them, so it is advised that if they do make themselves visible to us, we do not attack or make them feel threatened. I'm not so sure about this one, but at the end of the day, I am certainly no student of esoteric matters, so maybe it's just something that my brain cannot comprehend with the knowledge I currently have. In our number 6 spot today we have this UFO footage. This UFO footage is coming from another anonymous video which claims that real UFO footage is always censored and that this video has been previously censored, but they were here to expose the truth. It is unclear where this UFO video was taken, and at the end of the day, I'm no expert in debunking these things, so it's tough to say whether or not it's real, but let's all just take a look and you can judge for yourselves. I know that wasn't the most exciting video, but what do we think aliens are going to be doing if they really are visiting us? What do you guys think? Do you guys think that this video is really showing some sort of UFO? And if you do you think it's aliens or just some sort of secret project that we aren't privy to? In our number 5 spot today we have Perseverance. A point that was made in the video is something that we are actually now watching happen in real time, and that is the mission to Mars for the Perseverance rover that is currently there digging around in the soil. The video stated that Mars may hold signs of an ancient environment that may have been favorable to microbial life. Well, that is exactly true, and the reason the rover is there at all. The Perseverance rover launched from Earth on July 30th, 2020 and made an incredible and successful landing on Mars on February 18th, 2021. While the rover has provided us with some incredible high-definition photos of the red planet which truly are incredible to look at, its main objective is to dig around and search for ancient signs of life, collecting rock and soil samples for a possible return to Earth for further research. While Mars' thin atmosphere is unable to shield the planet from the high amounts of radiation coming from space now, it is thought that the atmosphere did once act as a better shield, and that the environment of Mars may have once been a great host for life, which is exactly why this mission is so important. While when the anonymous video was first released, we were still a ways away from the Perseverance mission taking place, it's really cool to see how it has come to fruition, and it's exciting to see the new photos and discoveries that are made each day. In our number 4 spot today we have UFO footage part 2. We have to include just one more video of what is claimed to be proof of aliens visiting us on Earth before we get back into the more sciencey top 3 points. This is another video that was uploaded by a member of Anonymous, and it comes from 2017. The video features a dark sky, but it shows what looks like some sort of aircraft with a few flashing lights, and it seems like it is able to basically just hover there. Not long after the video starts, another mysterious UFO seemingly joins the first one, and the two are just seen floating there. What do you guys think these could be? I obviously don't know what an alien aircraft would look like, so it's tough to say if this is a realistic example or not. All I know is that if this isn't someone playing a trick and they really saw this in the sky, I have no other possible explanations of what it could be. In our number 3 spot today we have TRAPPIST-1. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. One of the things Anonymous mentioned in the video was a nearby star called TRAPPIST-1. The video didn't go into too much detail about this, but I'm here to do that now so we can all know what they were talking about. While TRAPPIST-1 is a star, the revelation that the video spoke about was that this star has an entire solar system of Earth-like planets. This discovery first came in 2017, and upon further research, in 2018 it was revealed that some of the planets just may harbor even more water than Earth does. Some of the planets are a little too close to the star, so the water is more atmospheric water vapor. The ones in the middle have liquid water, like us, and the furthest ones have ice. TRAPPIST-1 is now the most thoroughly known planetary system apart from ours, which is kinda cool. While the Anonymous video made it seem like there was a full-blown advanced alien civilization living in this solar system, there still might be potential for some form of microbial life that we just haven't quite found yet. And that is very cool. In our number 2 spot today we have Enceladus. If you had heard of Enceladus before the Anonymous video, there's a good chance you knew it as basically an icy snowball floating around in space, or perhaps you simply knew it as a small moon of Saturn with a diameter of 502 kilometers, but as it turns out, this small moon might hold some pretty amazing potential. It was discovered that this moon has hydrothermal processes going on underneath its crust. To us non-scientists that means next to nothing, but what if I said that means that it just might have all of the requirements for life, and that it is becoming a greater possibility that we might find microbial life there. Basically, this moon has an icy shell for a surface and then a rocky interior, but between those two layers is a warm ocean, and this ocean is where scientists think the life is most likely to be. This discovery came almost accidentally when the Cassini orbiter arrived to Saturn in 2005, and it found water plumes shooting out of the cracks in the surface of the moon, which made scientists realize that it just may be geologically active. Through more research and by flying the orbiter through the water, by the time 2015 rolled around, scientists knew that it was holding all of the keys to life. While this little moon was never the original focus of research, it quickly took over with its incredibly exciting potential. In our number 1 spot today we have Europa. We've got another moon to talk about that was mentioned in the video that also just might be holding the keys to us finding alien life, but this time we're taking it over to Jupiter and its icy moon Europa. Europa has been a point of interest for a while after NASA's Galileo Jupiter probe in the 1990s revealed an unusually warm spot in Europa's cold surface. In March of 2014, the Hubble telescope detected what scientists thought might be a plume of water vapor, but the caution turned to cautious excitement and optimism in February of 2016 when the telescope caught another, much larger plume in the same spot. This has led to the creation of the Europa Clipper mission. While this mission doesn't yet have a set date, it will see an orbiter flying to Europa to fly through these plumes in an attempt to see what they are made out of, similar to the one we just talked about, to see if it really is holding the key to life, or maybe even life itself. One of the scientists on the Clipper mission, Robert Pappalardo, explained that if there is life on Europa, it almost certainly was completely independent from the origin of life on Earth. That would mean the origin of life must be pretty easy throughout the galaxy and beyond.
And we're starting off the list with Unit 731 and its human experimentation. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. Operating in Japanese-occupied China, particularly in the Pingfang district of Harbin, Unit 731 conducted inhumane experiments on thousands of Chinese, Korean, and other prisoners of war, as well as civilians, including women and young ones. The unit was responsible for numerous atrocities. They conducted experiments to study the effects of biological weapons such as anthrax, plague, and cholera on human subjects. Prisoners were infected with these deadly diseases to observe their progression and develop methods of contagion. Often subjected to dissection without anesthesia, they were also exposed to freezing temperatures to observe the effects of frostbite. Some experiments involved forcing victims to stand barefoot in the snow until their limbs froze, allowing researchers to study the gangrene screen that followed. Researchers also tested various weapons, like bombs and flamethrowers, on live human subjects to observe their effectiveness and impact on the human body. Some prisoners were tied to stakes and used as targets for grenades and other explosives to study the effects of shrapnel wounds. This is just the tip of the iceberg, too. The things carried out here were absolutely nightmarish. And at number 9, we have human zoos. These were actually just what they sound like. You'd think human zoos are something out of like a science fiction movie or something, humans being held in captivity and observed in their quote-unquote natural habitat by aliens. But this really was a thing right here on Earth. There was a human zoo right in Coney Island. Human zoos existed, shockingly, up until the 1930s, possibly even further than that. Really not that long ago. Human zoos were public exhibits of people, typically from non-Western cultures, displayed in a zoo-like environment during the 19th and early 20th centuries. These exhibits were part of colonial exhibitions and world's fairs in Europe and North America. These zoos were made to emphasize the belief in the cultural and racial superiority of Europeans over non-European people at the time. People from various indigenous cultures and ethnic groups, Africans, Native Americans, Asians, Pacific Islanders, they were often brought to these exhibitions. They were made to live in mock natural habitats, perform dances and ceremonies, and regular daily activities, all within the confines of a designated exhibit area. Exhibits were often accompanied by posters and pamphlets and educational displays, reinforcing these very stereotypical and misconceptions about the exhibited cultures. Pretty wild stuff. Next on the list, we have the radium girls. The term radium girl refers to female factory workers who were employed by the United States Radium Corporation in New Jersey and the Radium Dial Company in Illinois in 1917 to about 1926. These workers were responsible for painting watch dials with a luminous paint containing radium. What they weren't told at the time is that radium is incredibly toxic. These workers were tasked with using small brushes to paint radium-based paint onto watch and clock dials to create precise markings. They were often told to shake the brush using their lips and tongues so that they'd have a more kind of sharp tip. So they were just ingesting radium on a regular basis. Over time, many of the radium girls began to experience some serious health problems: anemia, bone fractures, necrosis of the jaw. They also developed various cancers. As these health issues started coming to light, some of the women sought legal action against the companies. In the 1920s, several workers filed lawsuits against the USRC and Radium Dial Company for negligence and demanding compensation for their suffering. In the end, this case played a big role in the types of safety standards we have in workplaces today. Number 7, the Kalavrita Massacre. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Most of you have probably heard of the massacre in Oradour-sur-Glane, France, by SS soldiers. Well, stuff just like that was happening all the time in World War II, and this incident was very similar but much less known, at least outside of Greece. This massacre occurred during World War II in December of 1943. It was a brutal event carried out by German forces in retaliation for the Greek resistance activities against the Axis occupation in Greece. During the German occupation of Greece, the Greek resistance movement actively fought against these German forces. In response to the resistance activities, the SS targeted civilians, especially in small towns and villages, as a means of punishment. And they just wanted to send out a message. On December 13th, 1943, German troops, part of the 117th Jaeger Division, surrounded the town of Kalavrita in the Peloponnese region of Greece. The soldiers systematically destroyed the town and its surrounding villages. Men, women, and children were gathered in the town square. The Germans separated the men from the women. The men were while the women and young ones were locked inside a school building, which was then set on fire. Those who attempted to escape the burning building were by the German forces. Some women and children managed to escape though. One German soldier couldn't stand it anymore and opened a door, allowing some prisoners to flee. The soldier was later punished by death. After the war, some of the responsible German officers were tried for war crimes, but most of them escaped justice, and some were never even identified. Next on the list, we have the Vipeholm experiments. These unethical experiments were conducted on mentally disabled patients in Sweden between 1945 in 1955. The experiments aimed to study the effects of sugar on dental health. This was initiated by the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare to investigate sugar consumption and its effects on teeth. The study took place at Vipeholm Mental Institution in Lund, Sweden, and test subjects were the institutionalized residents of Vipeholm, many of whom had mental disabilities. They were vulnerable, they couldn't provide informed consent. The subjects would be divided into two groups, with one group being given unrestricted access to sugary foods and candies, while the other were given controlled amounts. The aim was to observe the progression of dental cavities in these groups. Excessive amounts of sugary foods were given to some of the patients, far beyond what would be considered normal or healthy. Surprisingly, this led to severe dental problems. The researchers were deliberately inflicting harm on vulnerable people, and what makes this whole thing even sadder is that the results of the experiment weren't even released until years later because of how bad it looked on the confectionery industry, who were actually helping financing this. So this led to some to believe that the researchers were bought off just to keep quiet. It wasn't until the 90s where the cruel nature of these experiments finally came to light, being condemned by the public. Number 5, Attack of the Dead Men. The Attack of the Dead Men refers to a military engagement that occurred during World War I on August 6, 1915. There was a Russian stronghold located near the town of Oswiec in the Eastern Front. It was a key defensive position for the Russians against German advances. The German army, as part of the wider Central Powers offensive on the Eastern Front, attacked the fortress, aiming to break through the Russian defenses. During the battle, the Germans employed chlorine gas, a chemical weapon to weaken the Russian defenses. The gas was intended to incapacitate or unalive the soldiers defending the fortress. Now, despite being affected by this gas, some Russian soldiers, driven by pure desperation and with cloths or handkerchiefs soaked in water covering their faces, counterattacked the advancing German forces. The gas masks available at the time were not effective against chlorine gas, and the sight of Russian soldiers appearing with their faces covered in white cloths and just blood-stained from the effects of the gas, it gave rise to this legend of the dead men. They basically looked like zombies rising up and moving towards the enemy. And the fierceness of the counterattack, combined with the horrifying appearance of these Russian soldiers, caused complete terror among the German troops. They fled, and they're still being attacked from behind. Many of them died, getting trapped in their own traps and stuff. Germans believed they were facing the spirits of the dead, panicked and abandoned their on the fortress. Really cool story. Number 4, an often overlooked dark historical event is the forced sterilization programs that took place in the United States. Hard to believe this actually took place, but it did, beginning in the early 1900s up until the 70s, if you can believe that. Several states implemented eugenics programs aiming to control the population and improve the genetic quality of society. One of the methods used was forced sterilization, targeting individuals considered unfit for reproduction. The victims of these programs were often people deemed socially undesirable, people with mental illnesses, disabilities, and individuals from marginalized communities, African and Native Americans primarily. It's estimated that tens of thousands of people were forcibly sterilized under these state-sanctioned programs. The exact number difficult to determine because of poor record keeping and the fact that these procedures were kinda swept under the rug. Number 3, the Great Molasses Flood. On January 15th, 1919, a massive storage tank containing 2.3 million gallons of molasses collapsed in the North End neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. The Great Molasses Flood, also known as the Boston Molasses Disaster, resulted in widespread destruction and loss of life. The tank had been poorly constructed with weak rivets and insufficient safety measures. At around 12:30 p.m., the tank suddenly burst, releasing a wave of molasses, estimated to be about 25 feet high, moving at a speed of 35 miles per hour. The molasses wave engulfed the neighborhood, causing significant damage to buildings and streets and the Boston Elevated Railway. The disaster resulted in 21 people losing their lives and around 150 others being injured. The tank had been filled to capacity just 2 days before, and the increased pressure probably contributed to this collapse. The disappearance of the USS Cyclops. So the USS Cyclops was a United States Navy cargo ship that mysteriously disappeared during World War I. The ship was used primarily for transporting coal and was one of the Navy's largest fuel ships at the time. In March of 1918, during World War I, the USS Cyclops departed from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and made stops in Barbados and the Virgin Islands. Its final destination was Baltimore. The ship never reached its destination, though. It vanished without a trace along its route, disappearing in the infamous Bermuda Triangle. No wreckage or survivors were ever found. Various theories have been proposed as to why the ship vanished. Could have been from a storm, structural failure, or an enemy attack, but none have been proven. The disappearance of this ship resulted in the loss of 309 crew members and passengers, making it one of the largest non-combat losses of life in U.S. naval history. And finally, we're going to finish things off with a bizarre one, with the trial of a corpse. This happened in January of 897 AD, several months after the death of Pope Formosus. After Formosus died, his body was exhumed and he was put on trial. Not before he died, after. The trial was orchestrated by Pope Stephen VI or 7th. There's some debate on that, but he really just wasn't a fan of Formosus. Stephen accused Formosus of perjury, violating church laws, and of being an illegitimate pope. During the trial, Formosus's 7-month-old rotting corpse was dressed up and placed on a throne. A deacon was appointed to act as his advocate, answering questions on behalf of the dead pope. Formosus was found guilty on all charges. His papacy was declared invalid, and his acts as pope were declared invalid. 3 fingers on his right hand, which he had used for blessings, were then severed, and his remains were thrown into a river. After Pope Stephen VI's death, Pope Theodore II annulled the whole trial and restored Formosus's honors and good name. He called the trial a travesty, declaring the verdict null and void.
Want more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about the government's secret time travel program. Click the video now to find out more. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.